Chapter 493. The poisonous insect method was broad and profound. If Xianan learned all, it would take too long, and it would delay his practice. Therefore, Suli only taught him the control method. After several failures, Xianan initially controlled the poisonous power insect in just half a day. Feeling the surging power in his body, he had a lot of fun. After that, Suli took Xianan on the road again and killed several poisonous insects to feed the poisonous power insect. Several of them were killed by Xianan and with the poisonous power insect. In terms of poisonous insect stones, there were a lot of gains, but there was no poisonous cultivation insect comparable to the poisonous power insect. Besides, it was troublesome to feed them, so Suli discarded them casually. In the blink of an eye, more than a month passed. Suli visited all the suspicious places in the Whitestone relics and gained a lot. She got nearly 3,000 Mushui spiritual jades, but this was also the limit. As for the center of the Whitestone relics, Suli tried to get close, but she gave up after sensing a breath that made her afraid. In this life, she was not going to take the road of poisonous insect practice. There was no need to add trouble. Senior Sister Apprentice, are you leaving? In front of the Whitestone city gate, Xianan looked at Suli reluctantly. Behind him, Qiu Zhen and others watched from a distance and did not dare to approach. Suli smiled calmly. All good things must come to an end. You should go back and have a look after coming out for a long time. If I have the chance, I will visit the Jiguang sect in person. At that time, don't let me down with your cultivation. I will work hard to practice. Xianan's voice was firm, but his heart was full of bitterness. How could he not understand that Su Li's words were perfunctory? Who could say when he could see her in the future? He rolled his eyes and suddenly said, Senior sister, can you give me a summoning talisman? I won't harass you on normal days. If I encounter a danger that even my parents can't solve, at least I have. Suli bent her eyes and looked at Xianan with a faint smile. Until the latter blushed, she took out a carrier rune and put it in Xianan's palm. She chuckled and said, This carrier rune can only be used 3 times. Ah, 3 times? Xianan's little face became bitter. He saw the beautiful figure in front of him suddenly drifting away like clouds, and only the voice echoed in his ears. We will meet again if we are destined. Xianan grabbed forward, but failed. He was lost and muttered to himself, Senior Sister Apprentice, Young Master, it's time to go back. Qiuzhen came up and said in a low voice. He was deeply moved. It had only been a month, but the young master had already reached the nascent soul stage under the guidance of that mysterious female cultivator. After a quarter of an hour, Xianan put away the reluctance on his face and returned to his former cynical appearance. But there was a little more firmness in his eyes. Then let's go back. I want to cultivate as fast as I can. When Qiuzhen heard this, he immediately felt very comforted. If the sect master heard this from young master, he would definitely be very happy. Who could have thought that the young lord's dislike of practicing was cured by such a coincidence? Although he knew in his heart that Xianan practiced in order to catch up with the female practitioner of the evil circle, as long as his strength became stronger, everything was fine. Shua, the advanced spiritual boat engraved with the mark of the Jiguang sect flew into the void and gradually disappeared into the sky. A light suddenly flashed in front of the empty Baishur city gate, and Su Li's figure reappeared. She looked up at the sky lightly, and then her body flew away like an arrow leaving the bow. Tianyi City. Juli region was the most prosperous cultivation city under the control of the holy sect Tianyin tribe. The largest Huangxing Chamber of Commerce in Juli region had also taken root here for thousands of years. The cultivation trade was extremely popular. On this day, in front of the gate of Tianyi City, which was hundreds of meters high, there was a regular queue as usual. From time to time, there were some practitioners who had just come out to see the world. Looking at the tall city tower, their faces were full of amazement. On a bulletin board on the side of the city gate, a few golden characters were constantly flashing. Those below Jinan realm are not allowed to enter the city. In the front of the queue, a female practitioner in white with an ordinary face was mixed in, inconspicuous. This woman was Su Li. If she wanted spiritual jades other than Mushui spiritual jade, the channel of the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce was useful to her. The Huangxing Chamber of Commerce in Tianyi City was the best choice. She retracted her gaze from the bulletin board and sighed slightly in her heart. The practitioners who could be regarded as the mainstay in Jili region only reached the standard of entering the city when they came to Tianyi City. At this moment, there was a sudden commotion behind the queue. Suli looked back and saw a huge golden jade chariot falling from the sky. The white gauze fluttered in the wind, and the flames were flowing under the wheels. It was like a fairy chariot descending to the world. The immortal sons and goddesses of the Tianyi tribe have returned to the city. Oh my God, I can see the talents of Jili region with my own eyes in my lifetime. This old man's trip was not in vain. I'm so lucky. Today, I'm blessed by the immortal sons. I will immediately go back to practice in isolation to break through. Everyone was talking about it. Suli also pretended to be excited and drowned in the crowd of practitioners. But her eyes were sober and clear. She looked coldly at the huge jade chariot floating into the city from the sky and frowned imperceptibly. There were more than a dozen Numas in the jade chariot, and all of them had extraordinary cultivation. None of them was lower than Yuanying realm, and 2 of them had even reached Huashan realm. Huashan realm was nothing to her, so she didn't care much about it. What she really cared about were the Numas of the 2 Huashan realm, which actually reminded her of 2 old friends. Tianyin tribe, hey, I'm talking to you. Why are you in a daze? Do you still want to enter the city? The grumpy voice of the guard came into her ears. Suli came to her sense and smiled apologetically. The guard was slightly stunned. This female practitioner didn't look good, but why was she so beautiful when she smiled? When he was in a daze, Suli had taken the rune to enter the city from his hand and disappeared in the big tactical matrix for protecting the city, which made him feel sorry. After Suli entered the city, she heard the noise. In her eyes, Tianyi City was almost the same as other cultivation cities. The only difference was that the roads and houses were wider and more magnificent, and the practitioner's cultivation was higher. For example, the street was as flat as a mirror, which could accommodate dozens of practitioners walking side by side. From time to time, she could see the strong practitioners sitting on the back of the demon beasts passing by. There were no practitioners setting up stalls on both sides of the street, but only beautifully decorated pavilions and shops. Suli grabbed a casual practitioner and asked for the way. Then she knew the specific location of the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce. She immediately went into the vast crowd. Not long after, a 9-story pavilion located at the corner of the central street came into her sight. The words Huangxing Chamber of Commerce were outlined with purple gold, which was gorgeous and undecayed for thousands of years. The Huangxing Chamber of Commerce is so rich. Little Suli, don't you consider going to the Huangxing Hall? After that, you'll have everything. Looking at the gate of the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce, Black Lotus's eyes were shining. His old habit suddenly occurred, and he desperately urged Suli to be a gentleman on the beam. Suli casually plated a layer of isolation tactical matrix on the surface of the Black Lotus ring and stepped into the gate of the pavilion. A cold and fragrant breath came to her face. At the same time, one of the handsome male practitioners in cyan clothes standing on the side of the door came out and stopped in front of Suli. A gentle and polite smile appeared on his face. What do you want to buy? I'm Qing Shi, and I can lead the way for you. Suli tilted her head and glanced at the female practitioners in pink clothes on the other side of the door. There was no fluctuation in her eyes. She just nodded and said, "Take me to see the Mu spiritual jades of the 5 elements, except for the Mu Shui spiritual jades." Qing Shi's eyes suddenly brightened when he heard the words. He made a gesture and said, "This way, please." Although the rest of the Mu spiritual jades of the 4 elements were not as precious as the Mu Shui spiritual jades, they were still valuable. If he could make this business, he would not have to worry about the practice resources this month. Thinking of this, he pretended to turn around inadvertently and quietly glanced at Suli, who looked younger than him. He felt a burst of envy in his heart. Different people had different lives. Some people were born with a golden spoon, and they didn't need to worry about the practice resources at all. People like them, who were born in poverty, had to rely on themselves to fight for the cultivation resources. Only by doing their best in the Chamber of Commerce could they get meager rewards and push forward their own cultivation. Their future was worrying. Have we arrived? Suli suddenly asked. Qing Shi was shocked and said immediately, almost there. It's in the branch ahead. He didn't dare to have any more thoughts or show any emotions. Compared with those desperate casual practitioners who put their lives on the line, his life was good enough. At least he was born with a good appearance and could work in the safest Huangxing Chamber of Commerce in the world. Suli naturally didn't know the thoughts of such a small figure as Qing Shi. She turned and stepped into the branch, and immediately saw rows of transparent counters made of spiritual crystals. There were rows of rare spiritual stones and spiritual jades on the counters. The varieties were quite complete. There were several pawns with the same status as Qing Shi beside the counter. They humbly introduced in a low voice in front of the practitioners who were either dressed in extraordinary clothes or looked cold and arrogant. Suli walked to the counter and glanced at it. She immediately nodded with satisfaction. She pointed to one of the fiery red spiritual jades and said, "Very good. Show me the Muhua spiritual jade." As soon as she said that, Qing Shi's face suddenly showed embarrassment. "Dear customer, our Huangxing Chamber of Commerce has a clear order." Before he finished his words, he was suddenly interrupted by a tender laugh. "Ha ha! Where does this bumpkin come from? She doesn't even know the rules of Huangxing Chamber of Commerce. How dare she come to the Tianzi Side Hall? Yuqian, the threshold of your Huangxing Chamber of Commerce is too low, isn't it?" This voice was not loud, but everyone present had cultivation and had sharp ears and eyes. They all heard it clearly and looked over at the same time. At this glance, many people's expressions changed slightly, and they secretly felt pity for Suli. How could this playboy come here? In front of the counter, not far in front of Suli, a graceful and delicate female practitioner leaned on the chest of a pale young man like a little bird. Her eyes were full of charm. At the same time, the female practitioner straightened up from the young man's arms. Her eyes were like silk, which made the male practitioners around her feel hot, and the female practitioner frowned. That woman was Yin Jiaojiao, the famous slut of the Tianin tribe. Suli glanced at the two of them, and then turned her eyes back to the Muhua spiritual jade. She said, "What is the clear order of your Huangxing Chamber of Commerce?" Qing Shi's face was pale, and his lips were trembling. He transmitted the sound in secret anxiously. "Go away. Yin Mingyu is the only son of the first elder of our Juli region branch of the Chamber of Commerce. You can't offend him." Chapter 494. When Suli heard what Qing Shi said, she raised her eyebrows slightly. Surnamed Yin, this idiot in front of her was actually a lineal descendant of Huangxing Hall. Seeing that she didn't show any sign of leaving, Qing Shi sighed in his heart and stopped persuading her. He replied in a low voice, "Our Chamber of Commerce has a clear order that the goods will not be sold before the transaction is completed. If you want to test the effect of the spiritual jades, you must buy them first. If there is any problem with the spiritual jades, our Chamber of Commerce will bear the responsibility." Suli suddenly understood. There were many deceitful means in the cultivation circle. If she could test the effect of the spiritual jades for free, she had 100 ways to extract the essence of the spiritual jades without being noticed. It was reasonable for Huangxing Chamber of Commerce to avoid losses in this way. But if it wanted to implement this rule, it was absolutely impossible for a Chamber of Commerce to do so without the backing of Huangxing Hall. Otherwise, the temper of the practitioners would not be so good. Thinking of this, she touched the universe ring with her finger and took out 10 bright, white spiritual stones. She put them on the counter and turned to look at Qing Shi. "Is this okay?" As soon as this thing came out, all the practitioners changed their faces slightly. Celestial stones. This female practitioner actually used such pure celestial stones to make a deal. It was really extravagant. Facing Suli's inquiring eyes, Qing Shi suddenly sweated on his forehead and said, The price you gave is enough to buy 2 muhua spiritual jades. I will get them for you now. He saw that Su Li wore ordinary clothes and thought that she didn't have a big background. But he didn't expect that she was so generous. Her wealth was probably not inferior to Yin Yutian's. No wonder she was not flustered at all. Muhua's spiritual jades were soon in Su Li's hands. Except for the first glance, she didn't look at Yin Jiao again. Yin Jiao, who had always been arrogant, couldn't bear it. She was so angry that her pretty face was full of anger. Her chest rose and fell violently. She pointed at Su Li and scolded, "What a lowly servant girl! Are you deaf? You don't even listen to what I said. Are you tired of living?" Yin Jiao insulted the elders, which made the surrounding practitioners frown. They secretly thought that this woman was so uneducated. Many people secretly looked at Su Li to see how she would react. Sure enough, Su Li stopped and looked up at Yin Jiao. Although her eyes were calm, Yin Jiao felt cold. What kind of gaze was that? Yin Jiao had a bad feeling in her heart. She regretted not controlling her mouth, but with so many people watching, she couldn't lose face. She immediately put her hands on her hips and continued to ridicule. "Oh, little bumpkin is angry? I can't help but pity you. You have such an ugly face, and you still dare to come out and make a fool of yourself. Hurry up and get lost." As soon as she finished speaking, Su Li walked towards Yin Jiao. Yin Jiao's face suddenly changed, and she pulled up Yin Yutian's sleeves. Qing Shi also followed her closely. It seemed that he wanted to say something, but didn't dare to persuade her. Su Li didn't stop and soon came to Yin Yutian. She waved her hand without saying a word. Yin Yutian, who had been calm, suddenly changed his expression. He was about to stop her, but he seemed to be invisible in front of Su Li. Even if he stood in front of Yin Jiao, Su Li's hand still fell on Yin Jiao's face. "Pa!" The crisp sound reverberated in the hall, and everyone was stunned. This female cultivator dared to hit Yin Jiao in front of Yin Yutian. She was really tired of living. Yin Jiao's face swelled up at a speed visible to the naked eye. She covered her cheek and was stunned for a moment. Then she immediately grabbed Su Li's face crazily. "Wicked girl, I want you to die." Su Li's eyes flashed with ridicule. She grabbed Yin Jiao's arm with one hand and exerted a little force. Crack! The arm was broken. Vulnerable. Su Li chuckled, but it sounded like a devil's ravings to everyone. Where did this hothead come from? How dare she fight in Huangxing Chamber of Commerce? "Your Excellency, you have gone too far," Yin Yutian shouted coldly. He failed to stop Su Li again and again, and his face finally became gloomy. Su Li's action was not only a slap in his face, but also a slap in the face of Huangxing Chamber of Commerce. If Su Li escaped today, he would become a big joke in Huangxing Hall, and even his father would be implicated. Su Li turned around and returned to her original place. She put her palms back in her sleeves and stared at Yin Yutian with great interest for a moment. Suddenly her lips buzzed, and a sound was transmitted into Yin Yutian's ears. "You want to use Yin Jiao's charming skill to achieve great success. You are not as unbearable as the rumor says." Su Li's first sentence made Yin Yutian's expression change greatly, and the second sentence made him tremble slightly. But Yin Jiao's charming skill is not as simple as you think. You have been cheated by her for several months, but you didn't notice it at all. If you fool around with her for half a month, your foundation will almost be destroyed. Now you even stand up for her. It's ridiculous. Yin Yutian clenched his fists and responded secretly. "Is this true? Yes or no? Don't you have a try?" Su Li's tone was impatient. She turned around and called Qing Shi. She took out the celestial stones and said, "Give me Mujin spiritual jade, Mumu spiritual jade, and Mutu spiritual jade." Qing Shi glanced at Yin Yutian, whose expression kept changing and didn't mean to stop her. He immediately nodded, took the celestial stones, and walked to the counter to operate. A fierce conflict suddenly disappeared, and there was only a little silence in the field. Seeing that there was nothing to see, the practitioners left one after another. Before leaving, they didn't forget to look at Su Li's face. Although they didn't know the content of Su Li's last sound transmission to Yin Yutian, it didn't prevent them from imagining it. This woman was not someone they could provoke. Yutian, Yin Jiaojiao, covered her face and looked at Yin Yutian in astonishment. She couldn't help but cry out. Yin Yutian's words were soft and pleasant in ordinary days. But when he sensed that his foundation was depleted to only 30%, it instantly became a deadly sound. Yin Yutian's face was distorted. He thought of what he did with Yin Jiaojiao in ordinary days. He thought that this woman had completely changed her mind after following him. He even chose a low-level practice method in order not to hurt Yin Jiaojiao. But he didn't expect that the person next to him wanted his life every day. Yin Jiaojiao, you are really good. Yin Yutian took a deep breath. He was so angry that he laughed. His eyes were full of killing intent. When Yin Jiaojiao saw Yin Yutian's change of attitude, her heart skipped a beat. The grievance on her face immediately turned into panic. No, Yutian, I didn't mean to hurt you. Listen to my explanation. Slap. Yin Yutian slapped Yin Jiaojiao fiercely with a ferocious look. Get out. Get out. Otherwise, even if you have the support of the Tianyin tribe, I will kill you. Yin Jiaojiao finally felt Yin Yutian's determination. She didn't care that her face was beaten into a pig's head. She quickly got up and fled in panic. Seeing that Yin Jiaojiao was so straightforward, the last hope in Yin Yutian's heart was completely eliminated. He was full of bitterness. Even if he almost lost his foundation, he was still soft-hearted after all. He closed his eyes in pain. After a long time, he slowly opened his eyes, and calmness was restored in his eyes. There was no one in the Tianzi side hall. Yin Yutian pondered for a moment and called Qing Shi. Where is the female senior? The female practitioner could see through his background at a glance. She couldn't be as young as she looked. Yin Yutian guessed that she was probably a hidden senior. Qing Shi was surprised to hear the name. Senior. Although cultivators could maintain their youth forever, there is still a difference between an aged face and a truly young face. He had received many people, so he could naturally see that the female guest was truly young. At most, she was no more than 500 years old. However, since the young lord said so, he didn't dare to refute. He immediately replied respectfully. After the senior bought 4,000 Mu 4 Elements spiritual jades, she left slowly. 4,000 Mu 4 Elements spiritual jades? Yin Yutian was stunned, and he almost thought that he had heard it wrong. Mu 4 Elements spiritual jades had no great use except for refining elixirs. Besides, the elixirs refined by Mu spiritual jades were useful. Other spiritual jades could not be sold at all. Yes. Qing Shi lowered his head and carefully added, they were all paid with celestial stones. Yin Yutian was speechless suddenly. Even if there were spiritual stones, they shouldn't be spent like this. Even with his identity, he didn't dare to be so wasteful. At this moment, he was even more convinced that the female practitioner he saw during the day was an old monster. Only an old monster could be so rich. You go back. Don't tell anyone what I asked today. Waving his hand, Yin Yutian let Qing Shi go, but a glimmer of light rose in his eyes. If he could find the senior to participate in the ghouling gambling battle. Alas, why didn't I think of asking for a carrier rune from the senior? How can I find it? I'm afraid that the senior will be unhappy if I investigate without authorization. Yin Yutian regretted it. After hesitating for a long time, he finally gave up the idea of investigating Su Li. Although the ghouling gambling battle was important, it was obviously not worth the loss to offend a mysterious mighty for no reason. Forget it. I'll leave this matter to my father. Before my father finishes his work, I have to make up for the deficit, so that the group of people in Huangxing Hall won't gossip. With a sigh, Yin Yutian left the matter about Su Li behind. There were 2 ends of the flower, one for each side. After Xian and returned to Jiguang's sect and showed his cultivation of Yuanying realm, he was immediately summoned by his father, Xian Jingzhou. Su Yu also put down what she was doing and hurriedly came out of the underground secret castle. I pay my respects to my parents. When Xian came to the study and saw that his parents were both there, he quickly knelt down and saluted. Before he completely knelt down, he was helped up by Su Yu. Looking at her son, who was capable and calm, her eyes suddenly turned red. With tears in her eyes, she said angrily, "Get up. You have been out for more than 2 years. You don't come back to see me." Feeling his mother's deep care, Xiaonan smirked, but Su Li's face flashed in his mind unconsciously. "Mom, I'm fine. You see, I have reached Yuanying realm when I came back this time." Su Yu wiped her tears and said with a smile, "Yes, my son has grown up. Your father is not as talented as you at this age. He is still struggling in Jinan realm." "All right, don't make fun of me." Xian Jingzhou sat aside and watched. He couldn't stand such a scene the most. He sighed with emotion in his heart and quickly interrupted Su Yu and Xian An's affection. Seeing that Xian An and Su Yu separated, he looked serious and said solemnly, "And since you have broken through Yuanying realm, it's time to shoulder part of the heavy burden of our Jiguang sect." Chapter 495. Xianan was refreshed when he heard the words, and his eyes lit up. "Dad, are you serious?" Xian Jingzhou smiled and stroked his beard, saying, "When did I lie to you? Great." Xianan was so happy that he almost jumped up. The old man, standing aside, shook his head and laughed. After all, the young lord was still a young man, and he couldn't hide things in his heart. "Come with me." Xian Jingzhou got up and walked into the house, and Xianan immediately followed. Su Yu smiled and watched the father and son enter the house. When the figure disappeared in her sight, the smile on her face disappeared, and her voice was faint. "Grandpa Wu, don't spread today's matter." When the old man, called Grandpa Wu, heard the words, several inherited disciples who competed fiercely in the sect today flashed in his mind. He immediately changed his face and whispered, "I will." Xianan followed Xian Jingzhou to the inner hall and found that there was a different world inside, and there was a small study room. "Dad, this is," he said in surprise. Xian Jingzhou hesitated for a moment and covered the file on the table without a trace. He said warmly, "This room is where your mother and I talk about important things in secret. There are many spies in the sect. Even if your father is the Lord, I have to be careful. Sit down." Xianan nodded, not fully understanding, and sat down obediently on the side. Xian Jingzhou turned around and pulled out a file from the bookshelf. "These are the important things and plans of our Jiguang sect in recent years. You can come here to read when you have time. Remember, these files can't be taken out of this door, otherwise you may be killed. Also, don't reveal the existence of this room. Don't tell anyone except your mother and me." Xian An's eyes were filled with horror, and he finally realized the importance. His excited mood was broken a little. He solemnly took the file and looked at it carefully. The first line that came to his eyes was "Bloody Accident of Holy Spirit." This chronicle file actually began to record after the reincarnation mirror was broken. "In the 51st year of returning to the sect, I killed people and took over the position of Lord. There were still 3 remnants of the enemy at large, but in the 52nd year, I killed people. In the 53rd year, I married Yu. In the 54th year, I killed people." Sometimes Xianan was shocked, and sometimes his face was hot. This account was obviously written by his father, and even his mother was recorded in it. He clearly felt that in the years when his father and mother got married, even the word murder was written with tenderness. Xianan continued to read. In the next few decades, he spent nothing more than killing people and pacifying the Jiguang sect. He saw his father's hardships, and his mother was bullied by others because of her birth. So he simply killed her on the spot. He had never thought that so many cultivators would die in the hands of his parents, nor did he think that the cultivation world would be as cruel as others had said. He had lived a carefree and comfortable life for the past 500 years, but that was only because his parents had been supporting him from behind. His mind was shaken, and he flipped to the next page. It was no longer full of records, but only a line of scribbled words. "In the 557th year, you gave birth to Lin named Xianan. I have no regrets in this life." Xian An's lips trembled, and his eyes were wet. Then he couldn't help grinning. How lucky was he to have such parents for his son? He pursed his lips and suddenly put down the file. He walked to Xian Jingzhou and knelt down. When he looked up, There was unprecedented firmness in his eyes. "Dad, I will live up to your expectations. I will concentrate on practicing in the future and share your worries and difficulties." Seeing his son's true feelings, Xian Jingzhou's face was slightly moved, and a strange feeling that he had never felt before appeared in his heart. At this moment, he had an illusion that he was old. "Well, mine has finally grown up." He laughed and showed a soft expression to his son for the first time. In the following days, in addition to practicing, Xianan read the files in the small study every day, and Xian Jingzhou also put all the files about the Linli building into the universe ring. Although he knew that his son could not betray him, he didn't want Xian to step into the whirlpool for the time being. Xian was like a sponge, quickly absorbing the important events of the Jiguang sect in the past 1,000 years, and soon saw the recent years. On this day, he opened a new file, as usual, and the 4 words "ghouling gambling battle" came into view. He, who could use the poisonous power insect at will, suddenly felt a little moved and checked it carefully. In the 1017th year, in the depths of the white stone relics, the burial ground of the immortal poisonous insect appeared. The Tianyin tribe wanted to swallow it alone. Our Jiguang sect, Yinquan sect, Xuejin sect, and Xiejin sect joined hands to stop it. They tied and agreed to decide the ownership of the immortal poisonous insect in the ghouling gambling battle 5 years later. There are very few poisonous insect practitioners in the sect. The practitioners who participate in the ghouling gambling battle must at least be in the Huashan realm. No one in our sect is qualified, so we secretly issued a recruitment order, but no one is suitable. It's worrying. In the 1018th year, we recruited 3 suitable poisonous insect practitioners, but we refused because we were afraid of the revenge of the Tianyin tribe. In the 1019th year, we recruited a suitable poisonous insect practitioner, but we found out that he was a pawn of the Tianyin tribe and killed him. In the 1020th year, we got nothing. In the 1021st year, we got nothing. After the 1022nd year, there was still no result. Seeing this, Xianan frowned. He was now 465 years old, and the 1022nd year was this year. It was also the 5th year of the agreement, but his father still didn't find a suitable poisonous insect practitioner. It was urgent to find someone. He finally felt the pressure of his father. Not only did he have to maintain the affairs of the sect, but he also had to struggle under the internal strife of the Tianyin tribe. "My cultivation is too weak. Even if I get the poisonous power insect, I can only deal with ordinary peak of Yuanying realm at most. I haven't even reached the threshold to participate." Xianan lamented in his heart. He took out a delicate carrier rune and put it in front of him. There was hesitation in his eyes. If he could invite the mysterious senior sister apprentice, he would have a great chance of winning. But if he used up a chance for this, would the senior sister apprentice have a bad impression of him? After thinking for a long time, Xianan sighed and put away the carrier rune. After all, he didn't dare to pass his thoughts into it. There are still a few months before the appointed time. Instead of disturbing the senior sister apprentice rashly, it is better to ask my father about the progress. After all, this file was written a month ago. After making up his mind, Xianan put down the file and strode away. After asking Earl Wu about the whereabouts of Xian Jingzhou, he immediately went to the hall of the sect. At this moment, Xian Jingzhou sat in the main seat of the hall. He glanced at the elders in the hall and frowned. "You really can't find a suitable poisonous insect practitioner?" The leading elder in a white robe shook his head and sighed bitterly. "Lord, you have seen it in the past 4 years. Poisonous insect practitioners are extremely rare, and they all cherish their lives. Today, the Tianyin tribe is powerful, and there are 2 immortal sons and goddesses above our heads. There is no possibility of decline in the future. As long as the poisonous insect practitioners don't intend to leave their hometown, they will not choose to fight against it." After the elder in a white robe finished speaking, the younger elder in black clothes on his side suddenly snorted coldly. "Elder Fong, you really know how to boost others' morale and belittle your own. Just because it is difficult to find a suitable one, we should stop looking for one?" The elder in a white robe looked pale. When did I say that I would not look for one? If you put the idea of making fun of me in a looking for a suitable person, maybe you have already found a suitable candidate. That's right. Elder Lee is unforgiving, but he has made the least contribution. I don't know how he has the face to mock Elder Fong. Nonsense. When has our elderly ever been lazy? It is clear that you are usually lazy and your eyes are on the ground. The two factions headed by Elder Fong and Elderly quarreled in the blink of an eye. Xian Jingzhou's face was cold, and his eyebrows were twitching wildly. Finally, when the voices of the two parties reached a higher level, he shouted loudly, "All of you, shut up." As soon as these words came out, everyone's face changed slightly in an instant. They covered their painful eardrums, and they were shocked. Lord's cultivation had improved again. The quiet place of the hall of the sect is like a vegetable market, noisy and chaotic because of you elders. What a scandal! Xian Jingzhou stood up, and his small figure blocked the candlelight behind the golden seat, which added a little pressure in everyone's eyes. But at this moment, a young man's clear voice came. "I'm Xian and Lord." Xian Jingzhou was slightly stunned, and the anger in his heart disappeared. Why did this kid come to the main hall instead of reading in the study? He looked at the people standing in the hall who were silent and felt impatient. He waved his hand with a cold face. "Go back and reflect on your mistakes." Elder Fong and Elderly felt like being pardoned and thought that the young lord came at the right time. They hurriedly retreated and left in the blink of an eye. Xian Jingzhou rubbed his aching eyebrows. The two elders had been at odds with each other for hundreds of years. If it weren't for their good strength, he would have killed these two who didn't know the rules. However, there was no one in the sect. Shannon pushed the door and walked in. His shadow dragged a long trace on the ground of the hall. He looked at his father in the hall, and his irritation had not faded. He saluted respectfully. Seeing that there were no outsiders around, he straightened up and said, "Father, what are you worried about?" Xian Jingzhou waved his hand and didn't want to say more. He just asked, "Why do you come here instead of reading?" Xianon straightened up and immediately replied, "I read the Guling gambling battle. This year is the last year. How is the progress?" "Not bad. You have learned to care about the food of the sect. You have made progress." Xian Jingzhou temporarily suppressed his irritation, nodded with appreciation, and said, "It's okay to tell you about it. You have also seen the record in the file. There is no suitable person so far. If there is no candidate after 3 months, our Jiguang sect can only give up." At that time, he could only let Ting Shan take the risk. He was secretly nervous. Xianon was not surprised when he heard this, but he struggled more in his heart. After hesitating for a moment, he finally said, "I have a candidate on my side, and I want to hear your opinion." "On your side?" Xian Jingzhou couldn't help laughing. This kid didn't know that Xiao Zhan had secretly followed him when he was practicing outside these years. Didn't he know who he had contacted? Among them, there was not even one in the Huashan realm, let alone the poisonous insect practitioner in the Huashan realm. He was probably cheated by someone. Don't show off. You're only in the Jindan realm. How can you make friends with the poisonous insect practitioner in the Huashan realm? Don't make trouble for the sect. Chapter 496. 34 Chinese Net. In 1 second wonderful pop-up window, free reading. Xianon was dumbfounded when his father refused. He immediately forgot Su Li's instructions and said anxiously, "Dad, I mean it. That senior sister apprentice is very kind to me, and she gave me." Xian Jingzhou interrupted him helplessly and asked, "What is your senior sister apprentice's cultivation now?" Xianon was stunned when he heard the words. Thinking of Su Li's childish face, he was confused. When they first met, the senior sister apprentice was in the early stage of Jindan realm. But later, she killed those people easily and then killed the poisonous insect demon easily. What was her cultivation? I don't know, but Xianon answered honestly. Xian Jingzhou suddenly felt very tired. He put on a serious face and said, "Forget it. Don't get involved in this matter. Go to practice." Xian An's face turned red. He only felt that something was stuck in his heart. But seeing that his father was angry, he could only nod unwillingly and leave the hall. After Xianan left, the solemnity on Xian Jingzhou's face faded, and a haze flashed in his eyes. When the fate ancestor is in power, the world is so chaotic. Forget it. If I can't avoid this disaster, I won't. 2 months passed in the blink of an eye. During this time, Sui did not go back to Jiuzhou region. She directly booked a room in a cultivation inn in Tianyi City and absorbed spiritual jades at ease. The evil ghost observed the change of the pubic region of the original body and confirmed it with Suiyu tactics. There were many spies in Jiuzhou region. Although there was also Huangxing Chamber of Commerce, it was far less convenient than Jili region. When she tested the most suitable spiritual jades for herself, she had to buy them on a large scale. During the 2 months, Suli also went out for a day or two, hoping to meet the 2 familiar people with the Numa 2 days ago. Tianyi City was at the foot of the mountain of Tianyin tribe, so no one dared to be presumptuous. But the Numa couldn't be traced. Suli guessed that the 2 people should have left the city and returned to Tianyin tribe. After coming to a conclusion, Suli returned to the inn and didn't go out. The speed of refining spiritual jades increased day by day. Finally, on the last day of 2 months, the last spiritual jade was also refined. At this moment, Suli looked over the pubic region. The essence light balls formed by thousands of spiritual jades of gold, wood, fire, and earth were flickering. Suli controlled the first golden light ball to integrate into the black lotus-bearing essence, and the black lotus was illuminated with golden light in an instant. Su Li's eyes were shining, and her practice method flowed. She sensed the change of Suiyu tactics carefully. Since her reincarnation and cultivation, she had traveled the star path twice. After the thrilling Zhuji realm in Bizhui space, as Black Lotus said, she had no bottleneck until now when she reached the peak of Jindan realm. She only needed to stack up her spiritual power. Going forward, it was another Chuangxing path. She could already vaguely sense the existence of the Stargate, but her feeling told her that this Chuangxing path would be more difficult than the previous 2 times. According to Black Lotus, the Gold Core realm was only for laying a solid foundation. Only after taking this step and reaching the Gold Core realm could one truly embark on the path of cultivation. As the only obstacle in front of him, the Chuangxing path would not be simple. She was not ready yet. At least, if Suiyu tactics could make another breakthrough, she would be more confident. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The Black Lotus, which was dyed golden, vibrated gently, and the golden jade light flowed like a magic weapon of divine light. Suli opened her eyes, and the golden light flashed in her eyes, making a soft sound as it cut through the air. The bottleneck has been broken through to 3 out of 100, and when I use it, it has a sharp pneuma. If I use the sword intent, the power will be considerable. Mujin's spiritual jade is not bad. After coming to a conclusion, Suli waited for the pneuma of the golden light ball to disappear and immediately led the next group of spiritual jade essence into her pubic region. After half a day, all the spiritual jade essence in Su Li's hand was consumed. She got up and opened the window near the street. She looked at the bustling tourists on the street through the tactical matrix and muttered to herself, "Maybe it's not what I imagined." Mu's spiritual jades of the 5 elements were not suitable for cultivation. If she fused them with the spiritual jades of the 5 elements, she could exert 3 times more strength than usual. If she fused them with the spiritual jades of the wood element, she felt that her body was full of vitality, and she could recover quickly even if she was injured. The effect of the spiritual jades of the Mushui spiritual jade must be similar. If she fused them with the spiritual jades of the fire element, the power of the Taoist method of the fire element would be doubled. However, she didn't study the Taoist method deeply, and she didn't know how much the power of the higher-grade Taoist method could be increased. If she fused them with the spiritual jades of the earth element, her defensive power would be greatly increased, and it could also form a field similar to the gravity tactical matrix. The spiritual jades of the 5 elements had their own functions. Su Li's eyes brightened. If she had enough spiritual jades to store, these abilities could be permanently fixed. With the advancement of the Suiyu tactics, there might be other new surprises. The spiritual jades in this world are far more than the spiritual jades of the five elements. I need more spiritual jades. Thinking of this, Suli went downstairs to pay the bill and went to the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce. Today, Qing Shi happened to be on duty again. Unfortunately, he was already followed by a middle-aged practitioner with white eyebrows who had an extraordinary identity. Because he was appreciated by Yin Yutian, he had changed from an ordinary manservant to a steward who specialized in serving distinguished guests. However, when he inadvertently looked back and saw Su Li's figure, his body suddenly shook. He waved his hand to find another manservant in cyan clothes and said, "This is a distinguished guest. I happen to be in a hurry. Take good care of her and don't neglect her." The manservant who was summoned was stunned when he heard the words, and then he was ecstatic. He hurriedly beckoned the middle-aged practitioner with white eyebrows to leave. The middle-aged practitioner with white eyebrows frowned slightly, but he didn't say anything and followed them casually. After all, these servants of Huangxing Hall were all very humble, and it was the same no matter who led the way. When Qing Shi saw the middle-aged practitioner leave, he immediately breathed a sigh of relief. He quickly appeared in front of Su Li before she chose the manservant, and said with a sincere smile, "Dear guest, you are here again." Su Li recognized Qing Shi, and her face was slightly relaxed. "It's you. What a coincidence. I don't want the spiritual jades of the five elements this time. I will buy all the rare spiritual jades of your Huangxing Hall." It was not the first time for Qing Shi to contact Su Li. Even if Su Li's request was more strange, he immediately nodded and reached out his hand. "Dear guest, this way, please. I will take you to the Tianzi Hall. If you like them, tell me the quantity, and I will arrange them immediately." Su Li also felt relieved when she heard the words, and smiled slightly. "That's good." Qing Shi's heart skipped a beat, and he hurriedly led the way in front. But he felt pity in his heart. The senior's smile was so charming, but her face was too ordinary, and she was a little cold. Not long after, Qing Shi took Su Li to the Tianzi Hall last time. Su Li glanced over the counter and looked carefully. In addition to the five elements, the spiritual jades also had many strange attributes such as wind, thunder, yin, and yang. Su Li couldn't guess their real functions, so she simply turned her hand and took out a universe ring from her sleeve, threw it to Qing Shi, and ordered, "Except for the spiritual jades of the five elements and the ordinary spiritual jades of the five elements, the rest are the same as last time. Buy 1,000 of them." Qing Shi took the ring, and his divine awareness scanned it full of celestial stones. He was shocked and didn't dare to neglect. He immediately took it and was about to arrange it. But at this moment, the middle-aged practitioner with white eyebrows came in under the leadership of a manservant and bumped into him. "Huh, you are here." The middle-aged practitioner with white eyebrows narrowed his eyes, and his voice was flat, but it made Qing Shi's forehead covered with a layer of cold sweat. There were many Tianzi halls in Huangxing Hall. Why did this person appear here? He was so unlucky. Qing Shi was anxious and didn't know how to answer. When the middle-aged practitioner with white eyebrows saw Su Li in the hall, he immediately raised his eyebrows, stepped over Qing Shi, and walked in with a majestic manner. Su Li saw him, but she just didn't want to talk to him. But sensing that this person was approaching, she couldn't continue to ignore him, so she turned around and looked at him. He is so young, at most 500 years old. The middle-aged man with white eyebrows was shocked, and the famous talents of the Tianyin tribe and the other four sects flashed in his mind, but he couldn't match them. His face immediately darkened. "Why did you steal my guide?" Qing Shi panicked when he heard it. He leaned over and knelt directly on the ground. In the astonished eyes of the ordinary manservant, he begged for mercy. "Senior, please forgive me. It was this junior who was possessed and wanted to curry favor with you. It wasn't this female guest trying to snatch you away." Su Li was puzzled. When she heard this sentence, she immediately understood what was going on. For her, it was not a trivial matter, but for Qing Shi, it was a great disaster. Thinking of this, Suli changed her face and clenched her fists. Fellow practitioner, this is just a misunderstanding. Although Qing Shi is not considerate, he brings convenience to me. I will compensate you on his behalf. How about that? Seeing that Suli was so easy to talk to, the middle-aged man with white eyebrows didn't keep a straight face anymore, and his tone eased. I see. But since you can make the administrator of Huangxing Hall curry favor with you, you must have a distinguished identity. May I know where you work? I don't know you. Suli shook her head and smiled. I come from another big region. It is normal that you don't know me. The middle-aged man with white eyebrows nodded and turned away. Qing Shi was relieved when the matter was over. He looked at Suli gratefully and immediately went to purchase spiritual jades for Suli. After a while, he hurried past the warehouse with the universe ring in his hand and was about to go to the VIP room where Suli waited. But he found a familiar figure standing in front of him. Senior. Qing Shi's face turned pale when he saw the middle-aged man with white eyebrows blocking the door. The middle-aged man with white eyebrows chuckled and flicked his fingers. A white poisonous insect flew into Qing Shi's eyebrows. Qing Shi's smart eyes instantly became dull, and he said, I don't know the origin of that female guest. I only know that she is as rich as a country. Young Lord calls her senior, but her bone age is very young. When the middle-aged man with white eyebrows heard the words as rich as a country, he felt ridiculous. You are just a slave who has never seen the world. The wealth of a cultivation country is equal to that of a whole top-grade sect. She is just a first-rank female practitioner. He glanced at the universe ring in Qing Shi's hand and directly grabbed it. He scanned it with his divine awareness, and his disdainful look changed instantly. So many, countless celestial stones. He had never seen so many celestial stones. These celestial stones are enough for me to practice, to pass nature's test. He gasped twice, and his heart beat violently. At this moment, the greed instantly drowned the reason in his eyes, and a fierce light flashed in his eyes. In the VIP room, Suli was still meditating. Suddenly, she was awakened by a messy footstep. When she looked up, she immediately saw a flustered manservant in indigo clothes. She held back her tears and said, Senior, something happened. Chapter 497. In front of the warehouse of the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce, many stewards formed circle. Yin Yutian looked gloomily at the corpse that had been sucked dry on the ground. He could vaguely recognize his identity from the withered face and outline. Qing Shi. Someone dared to commit murder in the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce and killed the steward of the Chamber of Commerce. How dare you? Yin Yutian was shocked and angry. His father was worried about the ghouling gambling battle and handed over the affairs of the Chamber of Commerce to him. He didn't expect such a big mistake. Excuse me. The distinguished guest in charge of Lord Shire is here. At this moment, the voice of a manservant in indigo clothes sounded outside the crowd. Yin Yuqian immediately turned around and looked up at Su Li. He was moved instantly and walked quickly to Su Li to salute. Others were shocked when they saw this. Who was this woman? Why was the young lord so respectful to her? Su Li frowned slightly and reached out. The universe ring beside Qing Shi's corpse automatically flew into her hand. She scanned it with her divine awareness and found it was empty. All the celestial stones had been transferred away. She flicked her fingertips, and the ring flew into Yin Yutian's hand. She said lightly, Young lord of the Yin family, how do you explain this? Yin Yutian had already seen the situation in the ring. Now he was questioned by Su Li. His heart sank slightly, and he cupped his fists. The Huangxing Chamber of Commerce will definitely investigate this matter to the end. We will never let you suffer any loss. Su Li looked slightly relaxed. That's good. I believe that the deduction skill of the Huangxing Hall can't even handle this trouble. Of course. Yin Yutian secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He looked calm and replied, Within a month, the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce will give you a satisfactory explanation. As compensation, the spiritual jades you need this time will be provided free of charge. What do you think? As he said, he handed out the ring with the spiritual jades and the ring that had been looted. Suli took it and scanned it with her divine awareness. There were a lot of spiritual jades in it. She nodded with appreciation and said, "Your Chamber of Commerce is really worthy of being the first in Qingshui Circle. I will wait and see. Take care, Senior." Yin Yuqian saw Su Li out of the gate of the Chamber of Commerce with a gloomy face. He called the trembling servant around him and suppressed his anger. "Find the elder of deduction. I want to kill him." The servant nodded in fear and immediately went to find the elder. Yin Yuqian was still angry, but he didn't know what he had done. His father, Yin Ju, the first elder of the first. "Ha ha! Your noble young master is decisive and has the air of a general. He will definitely be a talent in the future." In the hall on the top floor of the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce, the furniture arrangement was not as gorgeous as imagined. Except for the elegant tent, the emerald green decoration was full of a sense of simplicity compared with the shops on the lower floor. In the hall, on a table carved with jade and emerald, 2 cups of steaming hot tea were placed, and the fragrance of the tea lingered in the air. At the side of the table, 2 elegant middle-aged men dressed in white and purple Taoist robes sat facing each other. Their temperaments were shockingly similar, and every movement they made was filled with elegance. One couldn't feel the killing intent that cultivators should have. The middle-aged man in a white Taoist robe had gentle eyebrows and eyes, and he looked amiable. He was Yin Ju, the first elder of Huangxing Chamber of Commerce in Tianyi City. Hearing what the purple robe practitioner said, he immediately smiled and said, "My son is not talented enough to deserve such praise." Although he said so, he was surprised in his heart. He didn't expect that when he went out to look for poisonous insect practitioners and helplessly handed over the affairs to his son, this boy changed his playboy style and managed the Chamber of Commerce in an orderly manner. "You flatter me, First Elder. You are so modest." The purple robe practitioner picked up the teacup and took a sip. A light flashed in his eyes. "Unfortunately, we came back late. Otherwise, we could have prevented this disaster on the spot." Hearing that, Yin Ju still smiled and waved his hand carelessly. "We are doing business in the cultivation circle. There is no reason not to have trouble. Since it has happened, let's solve it later. You don't need to worry about it. The most urgent thing now should be the ghouling gambling battle." The purple robed practitioner nodded approvingly. "First Elder, you have a good mentality. I admire you. I came here for the immortal poisonous insect, and I will not fail you. I only hope that you can keep your promise and give me the immortal poisonous insect after it is done." Inju immediately nodded with a smile. "You can rest assured about this matter. Our Huangxing Chamber of Commerce will not ruin our reputation for an immortal poisonous insect. In this case, I am relieved." The purple robe practitioner raised his teacup. "Come on, I will use tea instead of wine to toast you." He could see that what Inju said was not a lie. As one of the 4 peak holy sects, how could Huangxing Hall break its promise for an auxiliary immortal goo? In the face of not enough benefits, the holy sects were extremely concerned about their faces. Although he didn't know why Huangxing Hall asked him, a rogue cultivator, to participate in the ghouling gambling battle, it did not prevent him from getting benefits from it. An immortal poisonous insect, even if it was auxiliary, was a great wealth for him. Even if it was not suitable for him, he could buy a large number of cultivation resources. Moreover, even if he failed, he would not have to return the benefits he got from Inju. He would not suffer a loss at all. Inju also raised his teacup with a smile. He had a Chamber of Commerce in his hand, so he wanted to make money peacefully. However, it was the order from Huangxing Hall to participate in the ghouling gambling battle, and he must find a rogue cultivator. It took him a lot of effort to find Kong Chong. No matter what the result was, he had dealt with Huangxing Hall. Even if he failed, the main sect could not find any fault. The 2 of them each had their own thoughts. In this kind of atmosphere, they actually had a feeling that they were having a pleasant conversation. However, such a harmonious atmosphere was soon destroyed. "First Elder, you are back." The door of the hall suddenly opened, and an old man with white beard and hair and a pale face rushed in. with blood on the corner of his mouth. Inju frowned slightly. Before he could reprimand the old man, he heard the old man say directly, "Young lord asked me to infer the murderer, but I pushed it to the ghouling gambling battle, and I even suffered a backlash. What?" Inju's face was slightly gloomy, and the shaking teacup stopped between his palms. He, who was also profound in the realm of deduction, suddenly had a premonition in his heart. This ghouling gambling battle would definitely not be as simple as it seemed. In the blink of an eye, another month passed. The 5-year period of the ghouling gambling battle had come to an end, and all the forces participating in the battle immediately gathered to the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce. 5 years ago, all the forces argued endlessly about the location of the ghouling gambling battle. Finally, Huangxing Hall intervened and forcibly chose the location in the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce. They specially closed the 3rd floor of the Chamber of Commerce and repaired the Spirit Consolidation Tactical Matrix, which was enough to block the fluctuations of fighting between practitioners at the peak of nature's test without leakage. With the intervention of the Holy Sects, the Tianyin tribe and other forces naturally did not dare to say no and immediately agreed. In the early morning of this day, before the sun went out, the gate of the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce was surrounded by practitioners who came to watch the gambling battle. Those who entered not only required their cultivation to be higher than Jindan realm, but also had to pay 1,000 high-grade spiritual jades. Even so, the venue on the 3rd floor was still full. In addition to the practitioners waiting to enter, almost 80% of the practitioners came to watch the fun. After all, it was rare to see the practitioners of the top sects in Jili region. Get out of the way. The people of Jiguang's sect are here. The people of Jiguang's sect come so early. As the exclamation fell, the extremely crowded crowd actually made a way for them. Xian Jingzhou, with a cold and solemn face, came aggressively with many elders of the sect. Soon, they entered the venue under the envious eyes of many casual practitioners. They are so impressive. How good it would be if I could also join such a big sect. Stop dreaming. Hurry up and get to work. When Xian Jingzhou entered the venue on the 3rd floor, he saw Inju, greeted him with a smile. "Long time no see. Lord Xian, how are you?" Xian Jingzhou chuckled, and there was no praise or derogation in his tone. Elder Yin's ability to make money is as good as before. "Lord Xian, you flatter me." Inju cupped his fists and took it as a compliment. When he saw Xian and behind Xian Jingzhou, he said in surprise, "Is this Xianin, the young lord of your sect? He has reached Yuanying realm at such a young age. He is really extraordinary. Maybe he can get a good ranking on the Tianjiao list in the next Tianjiao list." Xian Jingzhou enjoyed it very much, so he didn't want to be sarcastic anymore. His face eased, and he said with a smile, "This kid is usually very lazy. Fortunately, he has become more sensible recently. As his parents, I really worry about him a lot." "That's right. Recently, my son has also learned to share this old man's worries. This is truly a great relief to me." When Inju talked about his son, his face unconsciously showed a trace of gentleness. At this moment, Xian Jingzhou had an illusion that he had found a bosom friend. He pulled Xianin over and said, "This is your Uncle Yin, the 1st elder of Huangxing Chamber of Commerce. Come and greet him." After he finished speaking, he didn't hear Xian An's answer. Xian Jingzhou frowned, but he saw that his son was absent-minded. He didn't know where his mind had drifted. Xian Jingzhou was still praising Xianin before. Now Xian An's performance made him feel that he had lost face and was about to get angry. Inju quickly stopped him and said with a smile, "It doesn't matter. It's just a trifle." Xianin woke up with a start and realized it later. He hurriedly saluted and said, "Uncle Yin, please forgive me. I didn't mean it just now. I was rude." Inju nodded to him and was still kind. He cupped his fist to Xian Jingzhou and said, "Today I have a lot of things to do in the ghouling gambling battle, so I can't accompany you any longer. Lord Xian, please take a seat." Xian Jingzhou nodded. "First elder, you are busy. I will take a seat myself." Inju cupped his hands and left. Xian Jingzhou took everyone to sit on the largest seat in the west. Looking at the seats, only the Tianyin tribe was bigger than the Jiguang sect. However, now the seats of the Tianyin tribe and most of the sects were empty. Except for them, no other force had come. Shannon saw that his father didn't blame him again after sitting down. He secretly breathed a sigh of relief, but he couldn't help showing a sense of loss. In the past month, their Jiguang sect had tried their best, but they still failed to find a suitable poisonous insect practitioner to participate in the battle. He secretly glanced at his father, who had closed his eyes to rest and squeezed the carrier rune in his hand. There was still the last glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Senior sister apprentice, will you come?" Chapter 498. An hour later, the golden crow hung high in the sky, making the surface of the street golden and elongating a thin shadow. Suli stopped and looked at the familiar gate of the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce. Ghouling, gambling battle. Her eyes flashed with a hint of interest. Shannon didn't explain clearly in the message. She happened to be in Tianyi City and didn't leave. It was okay to go in and have a look. After that, she stepped up to the crowd of casual practitioners in front of the gate. She waved her hand and pushed the crowd away insensibly. Soon she squeezed to the front. Fellow practitioners in the cultivation circle, the venue of the ghouling gambling battle is full. It's useless to wait any longer. It's better to leave. The serious guard of the Chamber of Commerce responded coldly, but it couldn't extinguish the enthusiasm of many casual practitioners. "Let's go in. Even if I have to stand and watch, I am willing to." Seeing that the situation was gradually out of control, the guard's face changed slightly, and he retreated to ask for instructions. After a moment, he smiled and said, "Our Lord said that if you want to stand and watch, you can, but you have to pay an entrance fee of 10,000 high-grade spiritual jades." "What? Isn't this bullying? I'm standing and watching. Why should I be charged 10 times the entrance fee? Your Huangxing Chamber of Commerce is too much." "Yes." The guard was scolded, but he was not annoyed and continued. "Our Lord also said that the space on the 3rd floor is limited, and we can't force you. There are only 1,000 standing tickets. If you don't want to leave, we Huangxing Chamber of Commerce never force you to buy or sell." As soon as he said that, everyone immediately stopped talking. The next moment, countless spiritual stones were thrown to the guard. Seeing this, Suli didn't bother to use other means. After handing in the spiritual jades, she mixed into the crowd and entered the 3rd floor of the Chamber of Commerce. The messy discussion suddenly reduced by 90%, and many practitioners who had just reached Jindan realm showed horror. The pressure of nature's test. Su Li's eyes flickered, and she saw the acquaintances sitting in the first place of the VIP seats, including Xian Jingzhou, who was resting with his eyes closed. The Lord of Jiguang's sect. Suli glanced at Xian, who was also sitting in the VIP seat. She quickly retracted her gaze and looked at the seats of other sections. At this moment, a dignified voice echoed throughout the hall. "Cultivators, please take your seats. For those cultivators who haven't managed to buy a seat, our Chamber of Commerce has already prepared cushion. Follow the guiding light to find your seat." Then she saw a weak suction from the jade rune she got from the guard. She immediately let go of the jade rune and let it float to a futon on the stairs not far away. Seeing this, she disregarded the gazes of the surrounding cultivators and sat down slowly. But before she could settle down, she heard a young man's voice, which was extremely soft and almost crying, coming from beside her ear. "This big sister, can you exchange places with this little brother?" Suli turned her head and saw a young and extremely beautiful teenager looking at her for help. His thin figure was held in the arms of a fat female practitioner with a ferocious face. His skin was rolling, and the love and possessiveness in his eyes made Suli feel goosebumps even though she was in a stable state of mind. Sensing Su Li's gaze, the fat female practitioner suddenly turned her head and showed a fierce look. "Bitch, what are you looking at? You dare people my boy toy. I will dig out your eyes." Su Li's eyes were indifferent. She turned her head and ignored him. Even if the little boy looked very pitiful, she did not have the slightest pity. The cultivation circle was cruel, and she was not a saint, not even a kind person. She didn't have so much time to meddle in other people's business. Seeing Su Li's indifferent performance, the teenager's eyes were watery. Tears slipped down his little face, and his soul also trembled slightly. Su Li suddenly opened her eyes and stared at him. In the fierce female practitioner's eyes, she pointed at the middle of the teenager's eyebrows. The more familiar soul fluctuation came, and Su Li was slightly surprised. This teenager was Tang Lei in the reincarnation mirror. Her memory of Tang Lei was not strange at all, and could even be said to be profound. The first time they met in the reincarnation mirror, he was bullied by many childs in Yinjing. His body was smeared with shit-smelling herbs, and he was also poisoned by his brothers. He was fat. Later, he was cured by Su Li, and he even persuaded his grandfather to rebel. Your bone age is 58. You have reincarnated, but your memory is gone. Su Li's eyes were complicated. She had met many old friends since her rebirth, but it was the first time that she had reincarnated. The teenager only felt a coolness between his eyebrows. Although he did not recall all kinds of things in his previous life, his mind was extremely clear. When he heard Su Li's words, his eyes widened. Do you know me in my previous life? The teenager's first thought was that it was absurd. Even though he knew a lot of things about the cultivation circle under the indoctrination of the fierce female practitioner, he always felt that many of those things were deceptive. By the way, Master, the teenager suddenly panicked. He raised a heavy arm on his shoulder and shook it off fiercely. When he looked back, he saw the fierce female practitioner giggling and nodding to him. She has no chance to bully you anymore. Su Li's gentle voice came, which made the teenager's heart tremble. Then he saw the ordinary-looking sister stand up and point to the rush cushion. The ugly female practitioner naturally stood up and made way for her. She sat on the rush cushion and bowed her head without saying a word. The teenager was stunned and suddenly understood. He looked at Su Li with tears instantly. His lips trembled, and his hands grasped Su Li's sleeves tightly. He was so excited that he did not know what to say. Since you have the opportunity to come in, you can see the grotesque and dazzling cultivation circle. It is much more wonderful than you think. Su Li did not comfort him, but said in a calm tone. The teenager had endured for decades under the fierce female practitioner, but he could still maintain his state of mind and was not so unbearable. After a moment of adjustment, he quickly calmed down, but the gratitude in his eyes was so strong that it could hardly be dispersed. Suppressing the throbbing in his heart, the teenager glanced at the practitioners around him who seemed to be unaware of it, and then glanced at the many VIP seats who did not notice the change at all. Finally, he understood what kind of practitioner he met. He worded it in his mind for a moment, and finally only said cautiously, "Little brother, Tang Li, sister, do you really know my previous life?" Su Li smiled slightly. "You are still surnamed Tang. You look much better now than in your previous life." Tang Li blushed, scratched his head, and whispered embarrassedly, "Really? I was caught by my master at the age of 15 and became like this after eating a lot of things. Besides, I have not grown taller for decades, and I have always maintained the appearance of a 15-year-old. Otherwise, I should look the same as I did in my previous life, right?" How could Su Li not see that Tang Li's body had been deliberately modified? Although he was forcibly promoted to Jindan realm and had a long life, he had no strength to truss a chicken. His foundation was completely destroyed. Even if she wanted to cure him, it would take a lot of energy. Fortunately, Tang Li was only 58 years old, and she had enough time to save him. Seeing Su Li thinking, Tang Li, who had learned to observe people's expressions, suddenly quieted down. He looked at the extremely spacious arena in the center of the field, and a person appeared. It was Yin Ju, the first elder of the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce. A big shot. His eyes widened slightly, and he watched the bustle freely for the first time. He had only heard of such a person from his original master, but he had never seen him. Guling Gambling Battle, the 5-year agreement, starts today. Yin Ju glanced at the audience, and his steady voice came into everyone's ears. It was short and powerful, gentle and dignified. I don't think I need to say more about the reason of the gambling battle. This battle is about life and death. The winner will get the immortal poisonous insect sound acquaintance. As he said this, he waved his sleeve, and a black shell suddenly appeared on the round stone platform at the highest point of the arena. Wow, there was a small discussion in the venue. It turns out to be an immortal poisonous insect. No wonder the 5 major sects are fighting for it. No, this immortal poisonous insect is unpopular. Although its effect is magical, it can attract the 5 major sects. I know, it's that year. Tang Li didn't know what an immortal poisonous insect was, but he clearly felt that his sister beside him stopped breathing for a moment when she heard these 3 words. My sister is very concerned about the immortal poisonous insect. Sound acquaintance. Such thoughts flashed through his mind, and his eyes turned. He searched for the rumors he had heard from the vicious female practitioner over the years. He had been groveling for decades, and he had long been accustomed to pleasing others. Even if the sister was by no means the original master, he did so subconsciously. Sound acquaintance. Suddenly, Tang Li's eyes brightened. He pulled Su Li's sleeve and whispered, Sister, I know. But the original master once said that this matter is of great importance, and it can't be heard by others. Su Li heard the intermittent noises around her, and her mind was fluctuating. Seeing that Tang Li's words didn't seem to be false, she waved her hand to open a miniature bounded domain and said softly, Go ahead. Tang Li immediately poured out everything he knew. It's related to a secret force in the cultivation circle, Linli Building. No one knows who founded the Linli Building, but many holy sects are very afraid of it. They hate it very much, but they dare not to act rashly. I heard from the original master that sound acquaintance is an opportunity to draw the snake out of the hole. If the Linli Building doesn't snatch the poisonous insect, it means that everything is... If the poisonous insect falls into the hands of the Linli Building, Tang Li scratched his head when he said this. I just follow the words of the original master, and I'm not very clear about some things. That's enough. Su Li smiled, and Tang Li couldn't help but feel cold in his heart when he saw the smile. You tell me, Su Li said again. Tang Li was confused, but he saw that the original master, sitting on the rush cushion next to him, turned her head obediently and continued in a low voice. The Linli Building reappeared in the world, and holy sects were frightened and afraid. They took this opportunity to set up sound acquaintance to test the authenticity of the Linli Building. After all, the owner of the Linli Building has been dead for many years. Ha ha! When Su Li heard this, she laughed softly, which made Tang Li's blood freeze again. Little Xuanan, you really helped me a lot. Chapter 499. At this time, Inju walked out and sprinkled 6 light spots with a wave of his hand. The leaders of the 6 major forces all shot out like lightning, grabbing a light spot in the nothingness. Xian Jingzhou spread out his hands. Xianan stretched out his head and saw a word C. Draw lots and take half of the 12 heavenly stems. A versus F, B versus E, and C versus D. Xianan heard what Inju said, and his eyes widened slightly. He whispered, Dad, are we the last round in the first round? Xian Jingzhou nodded and said nothing. Wow. When Xianan was about to speak again, there was a sudden exclamation in the field, which attracted him to look up. 2 silhouettes suddenly appeared on the originally empty arena. One of them had white hair and looked like an old man, while the other was an honest-looking man with a slender figure. He looked like a simple-minded person. Su Li glanced at them. She didn't know any of them, so she waved the vicious female practitioner. The vicious female practitioner was in Huashan realm, and she was well informed. After being affected by Su Li's soul tactics, she said what she said without reservation. She pointed to an old woman in ragged flowery clothes on the arena and said in a stern voice, The old woman is Wu Yunzhao, a descendant of human and witch. She is very good at poisonous charm and is known as soul-breaking grandma. She hasn't appeared for hundreds of years. Many people thought she was dead, but she is still alive. As for the big man in indigo, I am unfamiliar with him and have never seen him before." As the vicious female practitioner said, Tang Li was dumbfounded. The original owner called her master? He knew his master's temperament very well. She liked to abuse slaves most. How could she calmly recognize others as her master? This elder sister had actually controlled her without anyone knowing? Tang Li fell into horror, and for a while, he couldn't hear the noise around him. Suli let him be in a daze and didn't wake him up. After listening to the vicious female practitioner, she nodded slightly and looked back at the field. The light was flowing in her eyes. In the past few days, she learned a little bit about the top sects in Jili region. Just now, she saw that the big man in indigo came out from the Xuejin cult, and Wu Yunzhao came out from the Shijin sect. These two sects were originally the first sect in Jili region. After the division, the Tianyin tribe came later and dominated Jili region for many years. In this grueling gambling battle, although the four sects fought for themselves, the real goal was only the Tianyin tribe. It was also a rare cooperation in many years. Suli took a meaningful look at the direction of Jiguang's sect. The six forces fought against each other in pairs, and there were no free rounds. Even if the Jiguang sect was lucky enough to be ranked in the third round, someone must play. In the seats, "Dad, do we really want to give up?" Shannon looked at the two sides confronting each other in the field, and the atmosphere gradually became cold. His eyes showed unwillingness, and he secretly transmitted the sound. Xian Jingzhou's face didn't change, and he secretly responded, "We have been looking for it for several years, but we have found nothing. Do you want me to change one on the spot?" He pinned, he said, and said he said, he was, he. If she can do it, it will be okay. When Xian Jingzhou saw that his son was still talking about such naive words, he raised his eyebrows. But when he saw Xian An's anxious look for the sect, he couldn't help but soften. He said, "It has come to this. You don't have to worry too much. If she can really help our sect win the gambling battle, I will give her whatever she wants." Xianan was shocked when he heard the words. He was not sure if the senior sister apprentice would come, but the memory of that month would not be fake. It was just a battle between Huashan realm. If the senior sister apprentice came, she could kill it with her bare hands. Xian Jingzhou didn't know that his son had so much confidence in the so-called senior sister apprentice. He wanted to give up directly, but he didn't say it in the end. Although he knew that there was not much hope, Xian An's words still made him think about it. "Well, I will give her a chance. Even if it doesn't work," Xian Jingzhou's eyes flickered. He had arranged everything secretly. No matter who got the sound acquaintance, the Leanly building would get it. "Lord Xian, you are so excited. Why are you so excited?" Suddenly, a voice with a faint smile came into Xian Jingzhou's ears. Xian Jingzhou was slightly shocked. He turned his head to look at the seat of the Tianyin tribe unhurriedly, but he saw a handsome young man looking at him calmly. He sat on the seat and gently swayed the paper fan in his hand. It seemed that he was giving advice. Iwaning, the new holy boy. Why does this person also have that kind of smell? He can see through my soul fluctuation. He shouldn't. He was surprised in his heart, but he snorted coldly on the surface and turned his head away. The holy boy doesn't need to worry about the affairs of our small sect. Iwaning was not annoyed at all. He waved the folding fan in his hand and said in a gentle voice like a gentleman, "Lord Xian, you are an elder. Since you don't want to say it, I am rude. Please don't blame me." Seeing his hypocritical appearance, Xian Jingzhou only felt disgusted in his heart. He sneered and said, "How can I not know what kind of person you are? Don't act like this to disgust me. Do you really think that you can become the great holy boy if you imitate a trace of the genuine essence of the great holy boy, Emo?" Hearing this, the smile on Iwaning's face quickly disappeared, and it was ugly and distorted. He just relied on the Tianyin tribe to intimidate others. Who would have thought that Xian Jingzhou didn't give him any face at all, which put him in an awkward situation? After thinking about it, he still didn't want to offend the lord of a sect. He could only bite the bullet and snort coldly. Then he turned his head and stopped looking at him. This scene was seen by many people, and it immediately made many bold people laugh. Iwaning's face was even more unsightly. The great holy boy, Emo, Suli was not deaf, so she heard the dialogue between the two clearly. But Emo, wasn't he in Jojo region? Could it be that he came back during the days when she was out? It turns out that the Yi family is the Tianin tribe. Thinking of this, Suli thought of the two Numas she sensed 2 days ago. Her face suddenly changed slightly, and then became gloomy. "Sister, look, the fight has started on the stage." Tang Li grabbed Su Li's sleeve excitedly, pulling her back from her thoughts. Everyone in the field focused on the arena. "Ah, what old lady breaking soul. Is that all you have?" The man in indigo clothes let out a laugh, and 3 turtle-like poisonous insects rose from his palm and merged into his body. His originally strong body swelled rapidly, and his blue veins were exposed. He was full of explosive power. Without any movement, the cyclone under his feet suddenly reverberated, and he disappeared in place. The white-haired old woman's face changed slightly. She had no time to use the poisonous insect's skill and dodged. The next moment, boom, a large cobweb-like pit appeared on the hard arena surface. Countless gravel splashed and dust flew. The 5 major sects couldn't help but be awestruck. This is the lapis lazuli that can resist the peak of Huashan realm. It was cracked. Many people were speechless. The Lord of Inquan's sect narrowed his eyes and said gloomily, 3 poisonous insects of rank 6 will add at least 1,000 kilograms of strength to the physical body. No wonder the old lady breaking soul can't resist it. This person should be the descendant of the Wang family who practiced poisonous insect, but he only inherited the poisonous insect of strength, so he is not a threat. As soon as the words came out, everyone was enlightened and talked about it. The man in indigo clothes has an extremely rare poisonous insect of strength in his hand. No wonder. Xianen was overwhelmed with emotions when he saw it. He touched his chest, where a rank 4 ultimate power poisonous insect was sleeping. Suddenly, he thought of something, and his expression became strange. Since the poisonous insect of strength was owned by the Wang family, did he and senior sister apprentice Su dig the ancestral grave of the Wang family? Boom! The man in indigo clothes punched the ground and straightened up. His eyes were still bright, and he didn't look tired at all. "Old lady, can't you do anything except hide?" Swish! The white-haired old woman appeared with a gloomy face, and her hoarse voice echoed in the nothingness. "My poisonous insect of charm is completely ineffective, but you have the poisonous insect of sage." The man in indigo clothes grinned with cold white teeth and laughed loudly. "I'm Wang Yin, the descendant of the Wang family who practiced poisonous insect. My ancestors have countless rare poisonous insects. Is it strange that I have the poisonous insect of sage?" Speaking of this, his tone changed, and he looked at the powerful figures of the sect with scorching eyes around him. "However, I have refined the poisonous insect of sage into my life, and life and death are inseparable. I hope that seniors will show mercy, but if you just want to exchange some seeds of sage for your own cultivation, I can't ask for more." The white-haired old woman snorted coldly, flicked her sleeves, and stepped down from the arena. "I admit defeat." Her poisonous insect cultivation system was based on the poisonous insect bone. Even the poisonous insect bone was completely restrained. It was impossible for her to defeat Wang Yin, so it was better to give up and find a breakthrough from others. Hearing this, Wang Yin smiled and held his fist to the splitting soul grandma. His purpose of coming out had been achieved, so he didn't need to continue. Seeing this, the headmaster of the Shijin sect looked gloomy, and he was angry and anxious. Where does this person come from? The splitting soul grandma has no power to fight back. The headmaster of the Shuishan sect laughed heartily. It was also a coincidence that they could find the man in indigo clothes. They had to make every possible effort. Who would have thought that this person could bring them such a surprise? The Wang family still has a clan in the mountains of the Juli region. This person has extraordinary means. He should be extraordinary. Maybe he is the young lord of the bereaved clan. We shouldn't offend him. Xian Jingzhou calculated in his mind and soon came to a conclusion. He transmitted the sound to Xian and nodded secretly and glanced at the seats in the field from time to time. In the second game, Gui Baiyan of the Tianyin tribe will fight against Wu Yunzhao of the Shijin sect. Yinju announced. Wu Yunzhao, who was originally depressed, suddenly brightened her eyes. She rose into the air and landed on the platform. For the first time, Wang Yan's poisonous insect of sage restrained the poisonous insect bone. She couldn't help it. For the second time, she would not continue to be unlucky. I have practiced hard for 500 years. This time, I must let the world see how powerful I am. She narrowed her old eyes, and the pink skull in her claw-like palm rotated rapidly. The mist rose and wrapped her whole body in it. When the mist dissipated, it was no longer the white-haired old woman standing in the same place, but a peerless beauty with charming eyes. Her clothes were only thin pieces of cloth, and the charming parts were looming in the cover. Her face was like the most perfect artwork in the world. Every frown and smile was charming to all living beings. She was dazzling. All of the cultivators present were dumbfounded. There were even some whose cultivation and status weren't high enough. Their eyes were filled with infatuation, and they revealed ugly expressions. On the other side of the arena, the white-browed practitioner stepped on the edge of the arena with a smile on his face. Chapter 500. It's him. Yin Yuqian, who was sitting upright in his own seat, suddenly changed his expression. He transmitted his voice. Father, this person is very likely to be the one who committed murder in the Chamber of Commerce that day. He even robbed a customer of a huge amount of celestial crystals. As he said that, Yinju's face did not change at all, and he only glanced in the direction of the Tianyin tribe. Father, Yin Yutian suddenly became anxious. That distinguished guest must not be offended. I saw her with my own eyes. Well, I'll deal with it after the Guling gambling battle. There is no need to offend the Tianyin tribe at this time. Don't be too enthusiastic. Keep calm all the time. That's what you did in your identity at that time. Yinju's voice transmission overshadowed Yin Yutian's anxiety, and a trace of displeasure flashed between his eyebrows. Yin Yutian knew that his father was unhappy and sighed in his heart. He knew his father's idea. It was unnecessary for the practitioner with white eyebrows to offend the local bully for a female casual practitioner, since he was connected with the Tianyin tribe. However, his father didn't see the situation that the woman easily played Yin Jiaojiao in the palm of her hand, with such weird means and insight that could see through him at a glance. She must be an extraordinary person. However, it was difficult for him to talk about practicing the divine skill, so he could only keep silent and wait for the end of the Guling gambling battle to find an opportunity. But if I didn't immediately seek justice for that senior, the effect of gaining a good impression would still be lacking. Helplessness flashed in Yin Yutian's eyes. He suppressed the disappointment in his heart and continued to look at the field. Come here, Lang Jun. Wu Yunzhao twisted her waist and faced Gui Baiyan. Her eyes were full of pink gas. Gui Baiyan walked to Wu Yunzhao blankly and hugged her soft body. He looked intoxicated, as if he was really bewitched by Wu Yunzhao. Seeing this, Wu Yunzhao's charming eyes flashed with killing intent, but on the surface, she exuded a more and more ecstatic atmosphere. Her slender snow-white arms wrapped around Gui Baiyan's neck. Her red lips moved, and her eyes were full of charm. His hands were behind his back. Suddenly, sharp green nails grew out from his 10 fingers, glowing with a cold light. They fiercely stabbed at the heart vein behind Gui Baiyan, as if they would penetrate Gui Baiyan's body in the next moment. Cries of surprise rang out from the crowd. Wu Yunzhao's eyes were filled with ruthlessness. She wanted everyone to remember that she, Wu Yunzhao, was not old. She was still the man of broken soul. Someone is going to die. Tang Li stared at the scene. Su Li nodded calmly. She looked at Wu Yunzhao and whispered, someone is going to die indeed. At this critical moment, Wu Yunzhao's complexion suddenly changed. Her whole body froze on the spot. Her sharp, Dark green nails stopped on the surface of her skin. She could no longer move. The dullness on Gue Baiyin's face disappeared. He took a few steps back and left Wu Yunzhao's arms. He looked up and down at Wu Yunzhao, who was frozen in place and her eyes lost. He smiled and said in a teasing tone, as when he came on the stage, "Broken soul old witch, it seems that your goo charm is not good enough. If you don't want to kill me, maybe I will give you some advice." Unfortunately, as he spoke, his finger gently touched the space between Wu Yunzhao's eyebrows. Wu Yunzhao's absent-minded face suddenly turned into horror, and then she let out an inhuman scream. She pinched her heart veins with both hands and exerted force. Pucci. Blood sprayed all over Wu Yunzhao's face, but Wu Yunzhao didn't know it. Her face was distorted, as if she had defeated an enemy. She widened her eyes and laughed wildly. After laughing for a moment, she showed a worried look again. With a ferocious look, she grabbed the space between her eyebrows with both hands, opened the head by force, pulled out the primordial spirit, and crushed it. Patter! The corpse fell on the arena, and the blood quickly dyed the ground red along the gap. The whole venue fell into silence. Many people with low cultivation saw such a bloody scene for the first time. Their pupils shrank, and even their breathing slowed down subconsciously for fear of breaking the silence at the moment. Only Gue Baiyin, who stood alone next to the corpse, still smiled. His white clothes were not stained with a drop of blood. He sighed and repeated, "What a pity." At this time, a burst of applause suddenly came from the seats of the Tianyin tribe. Iwaning stood up and clapped with a smile. "Ha ha! Senior Gue is really talented. My Tianyin tribe didn't choose the wrong person." Gue Baiyin behaved very modestly. He saluted slightly and said in a gentle voice, "You flatter me. I'm not talented enough to deserve such praise from the Tianyin tribe." Iwaning was very happy when he heard that, and he smiled more. "Senior Gue, don't worry. As long as you can win, our Tianyin tribe will promise you everything. You can take all the immortal poisonous insect sound acquaintance." As soon as Iwaning said that, the other 5 forces frowned. This junior didn't take them seriously. Even Inju, who had always been kind to others, felt uncomfortable for a while. "Then I will thank the holy boy Iwaning first." The smile on Gue Baiyin's face faded a little. He thought that Iwaning didn't like him and wanted to kill him with flattery. However, he couldn't show it at the moment. He could only thank Inju superficially and said to Inju, "I'm a little tired after this battle. Can I have a rest?" Inju knew that he wanted to avoid the limelight, so he nodded and said, "Of course." The previous drawing of lots was a rough order. For example, Wu Yunzhao admitted defeat in the first game. It didn't take much effort, so he would arrange it flexibly. Although Gue Baiyin didn't seem to spend much effort this time, he took action anyway. In order to be fair, he naturally had to replace him. Of course, he did this out of selfishness. He arranged Kong Chong to be the last to test the strength of others, and the odds of winning would be greater. Even if other sects saw this little trick, they wouldn't say much. The 4-peak holy sects were like an insurmountable mountain. Gue Baiyin quickly retreated. After he disappeared from the arena, the practitioners in the seats below immediately talked about it. Wu Yunzhao practiced in isolation for hundreds of years, and the poisonous charm was promoted to level 5. However, she was instantly countered by this unknown Gue Baiyin and cruelly killed. I didn't even see what kind of poisonous charm he used. There are capable people in the cultivation circle. If we don't come to this ghouling, gambling battle, our knowledge will be outdated. Yeah. Tang Li heard the discussion of the crowd, and he couldn't help but envy secretly. When could he become the focus of others' discussion? He really envied him. But at this moment, the voice of the woman beside him suddenly came into his ears. It turns out to be him. Suli suddenly said softly. Tang Li was suddenly confused and asked in a low voice, "Sister, what's wrong?" Suli glanced at him, and her red lips curved. "I found a thief and have to leave for a while. You have to sit here obediently and don't walk around. Servant, he will protect you." Tang Li nodded obediently and then wondered, "Who is Servant E? Sister, do you come out with a servant?" Su Li smiled and pointed behind Tang Li. That's her. Tang Li's face stiffened. When he turned around, he saw the ferocious female cultivator, who had never been nice to him, looking at him with a flattering gaze. She lowered her fat head and said, "Lowly slave, swears to protect young Master Tang with my life. Yuqian, don't mention the matter of Gue Bayan again. You can compensate for the loss of that customer." At the seat of the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce, Inju secretly told with a solemn face. Yin Yuqian was stunned. He struggled for a moment and finally nodded. He was really frightened by Gue Bayan's means. Even Wu Yunzhao died in his hands without knowing why. There was no one in the Huangxing Hall that he couldn't afford to offend. But in the eyes of businessmen, it was not worth it to offend him. The murder last time has not been spread. It is not difficult to deal with it, but I don't know whether the female senior can accept it, and how much is the value of the celestial stone in the universe ring. Yin Yuqian rubbed his eyebrows with a headache. At the same time, the voice of his father, Yin Ju, spread from the field. The third round, Yinquan sect versus Jiguang sect. Before the voice died away, the lord of Yinquan sect laughed. Tut, tut, tut. Is it finally our turn? Huang Quan, you go. In the seat behind him, a pale and fat young man who didn't look like a living person immediately stood up. He had loose fat on his face and heavy dark circles under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept for a few days. His body was as fat as a bucket, and it was all covered in a wide white robe. Yes, Lord. He saluted stiffly, and then tiptoed. He fell into the arena like flying and landed silently. I'm Taoist Huang Quan. Please enlighten me. Seeing this, Xian Jingzhou knew that it was time. He sighed secretly and was about to stand up from his seat and announce his abstention. Dad! Xian An's eyes were slightly red. At this time, he had no hope in his heart, and his mind was clear. Although the mysterious senior sister apprentice was very good to him, now he thought it was very likely that she did it casually. How could she deliberately get involved in the muddy water and offend a large number of top sects for him? Just thinking about it, he felt it was impossible. He didn't feel strange at all that his senior sister apprentice didn't come, and he even faintly breathed a sigh of relief. But how could he bear to see his father about to lose face in front of the sects? But at this moment, the young man called Huang Quan suddenly said disdainfully, What? Is it that there is no one in your Jiguang sect, so you sent a little girl in Jinan realm to die? As soon as this remark came out, everyone in the field showed surprise and whispered, because in their eyes, there was no one on the arena except Taoist Huang Quan. Xian Jingzhou was also slightly stunned and swallowed back the words in his throat. He glanced at the arena to look for the figure, but he didn't find anyone. Sister, could it be that this Taoist has gone mad? On the seat, Tang Li habitually pulled Su Li's sleeve as he said, but he didn't pull it. He tilted his body and turned his head in amazement, but he saw that Su Li had already disappeared. Sister? Tang Li wiped his eyes. If it weren't for the vicious female practitioner still sitting on the rush cushion, he almost thought that he had a dream. Suddenly, he remembered what Taoist Huang Quan said just now, and suddenly looked up at the arena. In front of Taoist Huang Quan, who was originally empty, a slim and beautiful figure condensed like smoke. The heavy soul robe turned into a small black veil that covered her face. Her eyes were like stars, shining with an intoxicating light. Her red lips under the veil opened slightly. I'm Su Jiuzhou. I come to ask for advice. Chapter 501. The indifferent words came into the ears of all the practitioners, and they were all stunned. Su Jiuzhou, who is she? Inju stared at Su Li's figure under the stage and frowned. She was another unknown poisonous insect practitioner like Wang Yin. An immortal poisonous insect had attracted all kinds of evil spirits in the poisonous insect practitioner circle. In the seats of Jiguang's sect, Xian An's eyes widened, and his whole body trembled as if he had been electrocuted. He suppressed his excitement and transmitted the sound. Dad, senior sister apprentice is really here. It's her. Her name is Su Jiuzhou. Xian Jingzhou didn't hear what his son was saying at the moment. He just stared at the tall figure under the stage, which overlapped with the shadow in his memory. The tone and the action were so similar. The same surname is Su Jiuzhou. She was born in Jiuzhou region, Xian Jingzhou muttered in his heart. Although he felt that what he thought at the moment was too absurd, he couldn't help guessing. Was it really her? Humph. You're playing tricks on me. Let me see if you have the real ability. In the field, Taoist Huang Quan's face darkened when he saw that the spotlight was robbed by Su Li. He snorted and opened his wide robe. A dark red pocket-sized coffin came into everyone's sight. The red color surged in the coffin, as if it was about to ooze blood. With the faint cry of a baby echoed in the nothingness. Then Taoist Huang Quan didn't take any action, but the lid of the coffin suddenly burst open. The wooden thorns turned into sharp lights and stabbed at Su Li. Su Li's eyes narrowed slightly. She just tilted her head slightly and dodged all the wooden thorns. Taoist Huang Quan was slightly shocked. Although he said disdainfully just now, he was very vigilant in his heart. He directly used his trump card, but he didn't want to be so easily dodged. No one can live for a quarter of an hour under my poisonous insect attack. His eyes were gloomy, and his big hands grasped the edge of the coffin. The chilly wind blew out of the coffin in an instant. The white mist evaporated, and the faint cry of the baby suddenly became sharp, which shocked the eardrums of the practitioners present. Whoa, what's that? All the practitioners' scalps were numb, and they stared at the white mist. Suddenly, an extremely distorted purple baby face emerged from a mist. As soon as it woke up, it opened its blood-red eyes and saw Su Li. It immediately opened its mouth full of sharp teeth and flew to her. At the same time, everyone saw the 7 halos on the baby's head. At that moment, there was a series of sharp inhales. The expressions of the leaders of the Bloodsword sect and Evil Sword sect changed as well. Afterwards, their expressions became unsettled. Who knew what they were thinking? Someone can use the rank 7 flying infant corpse goo of the Yin Spring sect. Taoist Huang Quan. Xian Jingzhou finally recognized this voodoo, and his face changed drastically. A rank 7 goo worm was equivalent to the Deshang stage. Although the Taoist Huang Quan who used this goo was only at the peak of the soul formation stage, the strength of Flying Soul was definitely comparable to the peak of the Crossing Calamity stage. Could Su Jiuzhou really defeat them? Senior sister. Xianan grasped the railing of the seat tightly. At this moment, he didn't think about winning or losing, but he regretted endlessly. He regretted sending that message, which put his senior sister apprentice in such a crisis. Xianan, you are so selfish. At the same time, when Su Li saw the ghost infant rushing at her ferociously, the corners of her lips under the veil slightly curved. Black Lotus couldn't help laughing. Gee, little Su Li, you are so lucky. A 10,000-year-old ghost is sent to you. It's a great tonic. Hearing what Black Lotus said, Su Li didn't bother to pay attention to him. She just said with a chuckle, I don't have a poisonous insect in my hand, and I am worried about how to prove it. I will accept the rank 7 poisonous insect sent to me. After that, she didn't wait for the reaction of the Taoist Huang Quan. With a wave of her hand, a black shadow with an indistinct face appeared behind her and rushed to the ghost infant. The blood-red eyes of the ghost infant widened in an instant, as if it had seen an extremely horrible thing. It turned over and fled without saying a word, regardless of the order of the Taoist Huang Quan. Puff! The Taoist Huang Quan's face turned pale, and he spat a mouthful of blood on the coffin. However, he didn't take other remedial measures and was completely stunned. Why? Why did the holy infant escape? That was the holy poisonous insect of the Yin Quan sect. It was a poisonous corpse that had lived for tens of thousands of years. How could it be afraid of something? The Taoist Huang Quan was stunned, but the ghost infant missed the last chance to escape. Su Li turned 80% of her attention to the evil ghost. Her speed instantly surpassed the screaming and fleeing ghost infant, and she pinched the back of its neck with one hand. The ghost infant was extremely scared. It turned its head 180 degrees and bit the back of the evil ghost's hand with its sharp teeth. Before the ghost energy gushed out, it was burned by the pure ghost energy from the surface of the evil ghost's skin. Its lips were burned away, revealing the green flesh and blood inside. Grabbing the ghost infant, the evil ghost immediately returned. After handing it over to Su Li, it disappeared. All this took a long time to say, but in fact, it happened in an instant. If the cultivation was a little lower, they only saw the ghost infant rushing to Su Li, but it was caught by Su Li in the next moment and couldn't move. Those like Tang Li were even more helpless. He didn't even see the flying infant's attack, and it was over. However, this did not prevent him from admiring Su Li. Sister is so powerful. At this point, there was silence in the field. Even the leaders of Yinju and other forces were completely stunned and couldn't recover. Gulp! Someone couldn't help but swallow his saliva gently. It was extremely harsh in the ears of the practitioners. Yinju and others immediately recovered, and they looked at Su Li with more fear and awe. Your Excellency, my Yinquan sect is not as good as you in the realm of poisonous insect cultivation. The Lord of Yinquan's sect slowly got up and glanced at Xianjingzhou. Then he stared at Su Li gloomily and said, However, the flying infant poisonous insect is the inheritance of my sect after all. Even if my Yinquan sect admits defeat, please return the flying infant poisonous insect, so as not to destroy the friendship. Su Li didn't seem to hear the words of the Lord of Yinquan's sect at all. She turned her hand and threw the flying infant poisonous insect into the black lotus ring. She looked at Yinju indifferently. Yinju reacted at this time and quickly announced, in the third round, Su Jiuzhou of Jiguang sect wins. Seeing this, the Lord of Yinquan's sect was extremely angry. How dare you? Your Excellency. Su Li turned her eyes to the seat of Yinquan's sect, and her voice was ethereal, interrupting the words of the Lord. Don't be a joke in public. If you say more, I will misunderstand that your sect is weak. Can you tell which is more important, the flying infant poisonous insect or your Yinquan sect? When the Lord of Yinquan's sect heard this, his face suddenly changed dramatically. He naturally understood the meaning. This woman was using his Yinquan sect as a threat. This woman's origin was mysterious. How would he deal with her? Thinking of this, he was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. But because of Su Li's strange means just now, he didn't dare to act rashly. He could only scold with hatred. Demon girl, you are so vicious that you want to destroy my whole sect at every turn. You are clearly an evil circle. Su Li listened and suddenly chuckled. It seems that the Lord of Yinquan's sect still doesn't know that a loose tongue can cause trouble. Before her voice died away, she suddenly reached out and grabbed at Yinquan's sect. Taoist Yinquan's sect was confused, and then he saw that the white and delicate hand suddenly clenched. Boom! Taoist Yinquan's sect exploded in an instant and turned into a cloud of blood mist. You say that I am an evil circle. Then I will show you the evil circle. In the Guling gambling battle, life and death are irrelevant. Su Li said with a smile, and turned her eyes to Yinju. She was calm, as if she had pinched an ant to death. First Elderine, the flying infant poisonous insect, is my trophy. Taoist Yinquan's sect is dead. Am I guilty? Yinju only felt that the pressure increased greatly, but he had been in the cultivation circle for many years, so he naturally knew how to choose. He immediately nodded and said, what fellow practitioner Su did was reasonable and in line with the rules of the gambling battle. Yinquan sect can't take back the flying infant poisonous insect for any reason. That is your trophy. The Lord of Yinquan's sect was so angry that his face trembled violently. His eyes were full of anger, and his lips trembled for a long time, but he didn't say a word. Today, his Yinquan sect was disgraced greatly. How could he face the ancestors of all generations when he went back? If I don't get revenge for this humiliation, how can I cultivate? The Lord of Yinquan's sect took a deep breath, turned back and sat down, and became silent. Yinju frowned and said no more. When he turned his head and saw that Su Li had walked down the arena, He immediately announced the next round of the gambling battle. Yin Yuqian was surprised and doubtful. He always felt that Su Jiuzhou's figure was very familiar. He had a guess in his heart, but he was not sure. Both Su Jiuzhou and Gue Baiyin were ruthless, decisive, and bad-tempered. If he guessed wrong, he would definitely offend both of them, and the consequences would be unimaginable. But if he didn't say it, he was very likely to miss a great opportunity. To guess or not to guess, Yin Yuqian struggled fiercely in his heart. The fourth round of the gambling battle, Kong Chong versus Wang Yin. Kong Chong was the top figure in the poisonous insect cultivation in Jiuli region, and his strength was extraordinary. Wang Yin was the descendant of the Wang family of the poisonous insect clan. Both of them were equally matched, and they couldn't tell the winner for a long time. It was a feast for the eyes of the practitioners present, and they couldn't help cheering. At this moment, Xian Jingzhou's mind was not on the arena. He stared at Su Li, walked closer, and uncovered the veil on her face. Xian Jingzhou's pupils suddenly shrank, and a strange face came into his eyes. This face was extremely ordinary, as if she was born like this, and there was no trace of changing her face. Senior Sister Apprentice. At this time, Xian Jingzhou had already stepped forward excitedly and asked about her well-being. The rest of the elders of Jiguang's sect were in awe and didn't dare to step forward. Although there were many evil sects in Jiuli region, Jiguang's sect was a genuine sect, and the mental method it practiced was also moderate and vast. Although it would kill in the cultivation circle, it would not abuse and kill as casually as Su Li. However, Xianen had been with Su Li for a month, and he had long been accustomed to Su Li's style. He was even influenced by Su Li and became a little evil. Su Li is good at changing her face in the reincarnation mirror. I can't tell whether this face is real or fake. This thought flashed through Xian Jingzhou's mind, but he smiled on the surface and stepped forward. When he was about to speak, he saw Su Li look at him indifferently. I show up not for your Jiguang sect, but for the sake of Xianen. I have no interest in the life or death of your Jiguang sect. As she said, Su Li turned her eyes back to Xianen and suddenly became gentle. Junior fellow apprentice, the carrier rune I gave you is not wasted like this. Chapter 502. Xianen didn't expect that Su Li didn't like his father and others so much. He immediately laughed awkwardly. Senior Sister Apprentice, I understand your mind. Su Li smiled slightly. It's human nature. I don't blame you. It's just that this matter is too light compared to your life. You used it recklessly. Xianen understood Su Li's meaning, and his heart was slightly warm. The 3 opportunities to send messages were all for him to save his life. He scratched his head and said with a smile, I see, Senior Sister Apprentice. After the two chatted, Su Li raised her head. Xian Jingzhou's thoughts were mixed together, and he didn't know what expression to show. This woman had a deep hatred for the sect and didn't want to have too much contact with them. He immediately gave up the idea of inquiring about her origin in order not to annoy her. As an elder, he could naturally see that Su Li's concern for Xianen was real. Although he didn't know the reason, it was always a good thing that Xianen was valued by such a strong person. If he could learn the nature of poisonous insect cultivation, he would be more popular in the cultivation circle. After he came back from the reincarnation mirror, he was much less interested in sex and sectarian views than before. On the surface, he was still the lord of Jiguang's sect, and he even handed over part of the responsibility to Xianen. But in his heart, he didn't stick to the form. Xianen stayed in Jiguang's sect, and his future was limited. If he could have a better way out, he would be more than happy. In any case, you still help my sect a lot. If you don't mind, I can send someone to prepare a quiet room for you to adjust your breath. He said calmly, and his posture was extremely low. Su Li nodded slightly. She still had a few battles to solve, and it was not good for her to return to the ordinary room. Seeing Su Li agreed, Xian Jingzhou immediately arranged for Xian and to take her there in person. The quiet room was prepared by the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce. It was also on the 3rd floor, not far from the venue. After Xian brought Su Li over, he didn't disturb her and left. Snap! Gently locking the door, Suli quietly watched the surrounding tactical matrix runes attack and drown the door frame. The cheers outside suddenly became much smaller. The Linli building appeared in Qing Shui's circle. She turned back to the rush cushion and sat down. She was lost in thought. From what Tang Li and Li said, she guessed that the Guling gambling battle was clearly a trap set by the holy sects for the Linli building. There was a strong sense of probing. The evil sword sect and the other sect were not as good as the sage sect. They had limited resources, so they could only invite rogue cultivators to fight. But behemoths like the Tiani tribe and Huangxing Hall, which had many inherited lineages in their sects, also invited rogue cultivators to participate in the battle. It shouldn't be. A trace of doubt flashed in Su Li's eyes. Her fingertips touched the black lotus ring, and the flying infant poisonous insect appeared in her hand. Master, the ghost energy in this goo has been completely extracted. Black Lotus flashed out and presented a black crystal with both hands. Ghost shadows lingered on it, sometimes condensing into a skull, and sometimes dissipating. Suli took the crystal and looked at Black Lotus meaningfully. Well done. I didn't know you had such ability. Hearing this, Black Lotus did not feel that it was a compliment at all. He said embarrassedly, I don't have that kind of ability. It was that stupid donkey. Oh, Suli raised her eyebrows. The heart of the little beast in the reincarnation mirror suddenly jumped and it looked perturbed. Suli didn't say anything. She exerted her strength in her hand, and the black baby in the tortoise's breath was instantly ignited into a ball of flame and burned into ashes in the raging fire. Master, Black Lotus was stunned. It was impossible for Su Li to not know the role of the flying infant poisonous insect. Apart from the attack power, this top corpse poisonous insect was also excellent for collecting ghost energy. Su Li smiled lightly. What I lack is not ghost energy, but spiritual jades. Black Lotus was stunned and immediately smiled bitterly. Yes, his current master was really an anomaly in the anomaly. The human clan with the body of evil ghost didn't practice ghost energy at all, but the supreme practice method of the human clan. Suli threw the black crystal to the evil ghost to study. She hadn't figured out the nature of the body of evil ghost, and her pubic region didn't contain ghost energy. So, she didn't know the use of the ghost energy crystal for a while. If the evil ghost couldn't study anything, it was better to give this thing directly to the green shadow to let him improve his cultivation. Suli was interrupted by Black Lotus, and her look relaxed a little. Perhaps this slight relaxation gave her inspiration. Suli suddenly froze, and her mind changed. Thanks to the previous life, she had always put the holy sects in a very high position. In her mind, the holy sects were unattainable and unfathomable. However, although she had taken advantage of the situation to enter the frigid sect, and had been lucky, it was a fact that she had injured the vitality of the frigid sect. Perhaps the holy sect were not as powerful as she thought. Perhaps she underestimated the identity of the daughter of luck. There are many outstanding people in the 4 top holy sections. Many of them are shrewd and intelligent. It is impossible for them to be completely controlled by a fate ancestor. They also have their own ideas, such as the Huangxing Hall. Su Li's eyes fluctuated, and there was an inexplicable light in them. Not everyone is malicious to the daughter of luck. I am too pessimistic. But I can't relax my vigilance. The Guling gambling battle is to test the authenticity of the Linli building and my existence. But all the sects send casual practitioners. If I really show up and show the strength of a junior emperor, or even a higher level like an immortal, those sects will have a reason to disassociate themselves and take those casual practitioners as scapegoats. I have just been reborn for less than 20 years. Who founded the Linli building? How far has the power developed? I only know Xian Jingzhou here this time. Is Xian Jingzhou a member of the Linli building? Suli took a deep breath, and her eyes returned to calm. She had many questions in her mind, but in the seat of the Jiguang sect, she pretended to be indifferent and did not contact Xian Jingzhou. She knew the experience of Xian Jingzhou, and the rest of the holy sects knew it better than her. It was hard to guarantee that someone was investigating him. If she was not Su Li, she naturally would not have any concerns. But she accidentally fell into this trap. If she had too much contact with Xian Jingzhou, there was a risk of exposure. At that time, the layout of the Juzhou region would be destroyed. Don't worry. Su Li narrowed her eyes, which were clear and cold. Fellow practitioner Su, have you had a good rest? The 5th round is about to begin, and your opponent is Gue Baiyan. Inju's voice came through the special sound transmission device in the quiet room. Su Li immediately got up and pushed the door open. Xianan, who had been waiting at the door for a long time, saw her and immediately greeted her. As he walked, he said quickly, "Senior sister apprentice, be careful. Gue Baiyan's means are very strange. My father suspects that it is a very high-grade, poisonous, spirit-confusing insect." Su Li nodded indifferently and asked, "What was the result of the last round?" Xianan obviously got the guidance of Xian Jingzhou, and his answer was very smooth. Kong Chong won, but my father said that Kong Chong was not the opponent of Wang Yin. Wang Yin reserved his strength and deliberately fought with Kong Chong. He came out of the mountain to gain experience, so he naturally wanted to fight with more people. Your father is right. Su Li agreed. Her figure flickered a few times, and then she went very far away and walked to the arena. Shannon stopped and smiled. The familiar feeling came back. The strength of senior sister apprentice was invincible. Even Gue Baiyan, who killed Wu Yunzhao, couldn't defeat her. Su Jiuzhou is here. As soon as Su Li came to the arena, the field suddenly became quiet. Whether it was the 5 forces or the ordinary practitioners, they all stared at the arena intently, for fear of missing any details. Both of them were unknown, and their means were ruthless. Who was more powerful in this round? Gue Baiyan's eyes under the white eyebrows narrowed, and his face was full of smiles. He was not in a hurry to fight, and said in a gentle tone with a trace of admiration, "It is really amazing that there is such a young and beautiful poisonous insect practitioner as fellow practitioner Su in Juzhou region. I don't know if I have the honor to see your beautiful face." As soon as these words came out, Iwaning, who was sitting on the seat of the Tianyin tribe, suddenly frowned and scolded in his heart. This time, the task of ghouling gambling battle fell on him, who was not valued very much. He made up his mind to do it beautifully, and it took him a lot of effort to find Gue Baiyan. This old lecher, I even let him enjoy my favorite concubine, and he still wants to pick up girls at this time. The practitioners in the field also felt strange. Gue Baiyan's words were too inappropriate. When Su Li heard the words, she covered her mouth and chuckled. Her tone was soft. "What's so difficult? In fact, I cover my face for you." Gue Baiyan's heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, he thought of something, and his face changed slightly. The black veil was uncovered, and Su Li's face when she walked in Juli region was revealed to everyone. Many practitioners saw that her face was ordinary, and they couldn't help but feel disappointed. "It's really her." Yin Yutian suddenly stood up, full of regret. Inju noticed his abnormality. When he was wondering why, he heard his son say with a wry smile, "Dad, Su Jiuzhou is the distinguished guest who has stolen Gue Baiyan." Before Yin Yutian finished his words, Inju's face also changed. He didn't take the theft seriously just now, but he didn't expect that both of them were powerful, and they even met in ghouling gambling battle. As for the strength of these two people, he couldn't tell for a moment who was stronger. How to choose a side? Inju had a headache and looked at the two people confronting in the field. On the stage, the smile on Gue Baiyan's face had long disappeared, and he stared at Su Li viciously. When Su Li showed her true face just now, he immediately had the idea of escaping. But when he thought of the Tianyin tribe and the poisonous insect that he had used up the celestial stones to upgrade during this period, he immediately calmed down and even became a little angry. His strength had reached a new level. Even if he was in the peak stage of nature's test, he could fight with him. If he went further, he would be a junior emperor. The woman in front of him was definitely no more than 500 years old. A junior emperor at the age of 500 years old was impossible. I can never lose. Thinking of this, he opened his 5 fingers without saying a word. Countless transparent insects flew out and shrouded Su Li's head. But before they flew halfway, he was horrified to see that the insects stopped halfway and turned into a flash of light at a faster speed, shooting at his head. In a hurry, Gue Bayan rolled on the ground in embarrassment to avoid the transparent insects, but he was in a panic. Why did his poisonous insect confusion bite the master? What was the enemy he was facing? Are you relying on these little things? Su Li walked over with a faint smile, and there were faint electric arcs flashing between her palms. My celestial stones were all wasted by you on these rubbish poisonous insects. You really deserve to die. Chapter 503. Tick. Sweat flowed down Gue Bayan's cheeks. An unprecedented depression filled his heart. At this moment, Su Li in front of him seemed to have shed a layer of camouflage. The heavy breath in his bones made it extremely difficult for him to dodge. Suddenly, the memory buried in his heart for a long time was evoked. His eyes widened and showed fear. This is by no means cultivation, but the suppression from the life level. The demon girl is definitely not a human. Alien. She is an alien. Gue Bayan's pupils turned wildly, and he opened his mouth to tell others, but the words became meaningless roars in his throat, like a desperate beast, which was chilling. Su Li was expressionless, and her body didn't move. She just crooked her fingers, and the transparent, flying insects, which fell on the ground and emitted bursts of light smoke, came to life in an instant, and all went into Gue Bayan's head in the blink of an eye. All the roars stopped abruptly. Gue Bayan's eyes became dull at a speed visible to the naked eye, and then he stood up directly and walked respectfully to Su Li's side. He put his hands in his sleeves and stood with his head down like an old servant. Whoosh! The wind that was not cold blew through the hall, but the practitioners of the 5 forces couldn't help but shiver. They looked at Su Li with strong fear instead of scruples. This woman was mysterious, and even they couldn't see through her means. Gue Bayan could even kill Wu Yunzhao, but he couldn't survive one move from this woman. It could be imagined how horrible her strength was. Is she a character at the level of Junior Emperor? Inju was still shocked on the surface, but he was shocked in his heart. His eyes glowed with obscure light, trying to recognize a trace of clues from Su Li's face, but he was soon disappointed. This person did not disguise herself, or she couldn't see through her. Where on earth does this woman come from? She is so powerful. Inju was puzzled. He soon noticed that Su Li's eyes looked at him again. He was shocked at the moment, and quickly announced her victory. Lord Yin, I will let Gue Bayan repay his debt until he dies. But does your Chamber of Commerce still need to give me an explanation? Su Li opened her red lips slightly. Inju had already expected that she would have this question. He reluctantly smiled and apologized. This matter is indeed the fault of our Chamber of Commerce. After the ghouling gambling battle is over, please stay for a while, and I will give you a satisfactory explanation. What do you think? It's the same over there. Su Li glanced at Gue Bayan, and Gue Bayan immediately understood and retreated. Then Inju saw that she pointed to Wang Yin, who was eager to have a try, and Kong Chong, who looked bitter. The remaining opponents, who will come first? Allow me. Wang Yin didn't wait for Kong Chong to speak. He jumped onto the ring, and his eyes were filled with fanatical, fighting intent. He said respectfully, "You are very strong. I am not your opponent, but I still ask you to fight with me seriously." Su Li smiled and tilted her head. Really? At this glance, Wang Yin suddenly felt terrified, as if he had been penetrated by some invisible demon in an instant. His whole body became transparent from top to bottom, and nothing could be hidden. The corners of his eyes twitched, and he regretted his impulsiveness. Interesting. I want the goo worm in your body. A strong interest flashed in Su Li's eyes, and her body flashed and disappeared. This was the first time he took the initiative to attack. Wang Yin's scalp was numb, and he finally couldn't maintain the smile on his face. His face changed greatly, and he wanted to retreat, but his feet seemed to be stuck in a sticky swamp and couldn't move. Poisonous insect of Miles. In the face of crisis, Wang Yian's pupils shrank, and his face turned red. He no longer cared about any consequences. He roared in his heart, and a dense cracking sound came from his feet. At the same time, his body also turned into a residual shadow in the blink of an eye. With a boom, he broke through the wall of the third floor and disappeared without a trace. All the practitioners, whose faces were covered by the lime on the wall, were stunned. They stared at the hole in the wall blankly, and they were speechless for a while. Poisonous insect of Miles' tracking. Although it is only half, Su Li blinked and didn't chase after him. She left a pneuma on Wang Yian with the talent of evil ghost. As long as it was not carefully examined by Junior Emperor, it was impossible to be found. Refining spiritual jades can't be done overnight. Even if I find the spiritual jades suitable for improving my cultivation, I have to improve continuously from another way. It seems that the poisonous cultivation insect can be considered. Su Li looked at the big hole in the wall, and thoughts flashed through her mind. Then her eyes fell on Yinju's face again. Yinju didn't expect that Wang Yian had the ability to break the tactical matrix on the third floor. He announced with embarrassment, "This round, fellow practitioner Su wins. The next round, needless to say, I admit defeat." Kong Chong stood up with a wry smile. He could see that Su Jiuzhou was invincible. Her cultivation and combat effectiveness were not at the same level as them at all. Why should he go up to die? Well, then, the winner of this ghouling gambling battle is Su Jiuzhou of Jiguang's sect. Wow! All the ordinary practitioners present couldn't help but stand up, and some even couldn't help but salute to Su Li. That was the respect of the weak to the strong. It's only been half a day. Xian Jingzhou stood up unconsciously and watched the black-veiled woman in the field lightly grasping the sound acquaintance in her hand. He was in a trance for a while, full of a sense of unreality. Did their Jiguang sect win like this? Oh no! Xian Jingzhou's face suddenly changed slightly. Thinking of the previous arrangement, it should have been agreed before the fight. But Su Jiuzhou suddenly appeared, and there was no agreement between them. Would this woman cooperate with his plan? Let's go. The Lord of Yinquan sect stood up, and his eyebrows twitched for a moment. Finally, he left with a gloomy face and dared not mention revenge. The strength shown by this woman was at least a little stronger than him. It was impossible for him to seek justice alone, and he would only humiliate himself. Go back and investigate her background, and let the Grand Elder of the sect take action. I don't believe that this woman will be a junior emperor. Fellow practitioner Su, please come to the top floor. On the arena, Yinju walked over politely. Su Li calmly put away this sound acquaintance, glanced at the people of Jiguang's sect, and turned away. Send a sound transmission to your father and ask him to prepare. He will know what it means. When Xian heard Su Li's sound transmission, he was inexplicably at a loss, but he still obediently conveyed the words to Xian Jingzhou. Xian Jingzhou sighed softly when he heard the words, and he was relieved in his heart. As long as you are willing to talk about the conditions, everything is negotiable. Wang Ying's face was extremely gloomy, but he did not dare to show a trace of malice against Su Li. After Su Li left the third floor, he dared to snort coldly. You can't accomplish anything but spoil things. Let's go back. The rest of the members of the Tianyin tribe didn't make a sound, and they didn't show any different expressions on the surface. But they all thought in their hearts, is the clan brother talking about himself? How can the clan send him to take charge of this action? Now that he screwed it up, even we may be punished. Several people communicated secretly and sighed secretly. If he didn't have a promising brother, how could we be under him? He is so lucky to have a brother, but he is really an idiot and impetuous. Look, he will die in his own hands sooner or later. After scolding for a while, they seemed to feel much more comfortable in their hearts. They showed hypocritical smiles on their faces and followed Wang Ying out of the gate of the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce. In the hall on the top floor, Su Li looked at the simple decoration in the hall and praised softly. Elder Een is still an elegant person. He is just an artsy person. It's not worth mentioning. Ju waved his hand and said modestly. The tension in his heart was eased a lot by Su Li's words. This woman's means were ruthless, but her temperament didn't seem to be so difficult to get along with. He waved his hand and dismissed all the servants in the hall, leaving only his son, Yuqian. Then he looked at Gue Baiyan behind Su Li hesitantly. Su Li smiled indifferently and said lightly, "It doesn't matter. You just treat him as a deaf person." Ju's face trembled slightly, but he quickly calmed down. But the previous trace of relaxation had disappeared. He pointed at Yuqian, and the latter immediately came forward and knelt down. "Senior, I didn't handle this matter well. Please forgive me." Su Li glanced at Yuqian strangely. "What's wrong with you?" Yuqian was flustered. He opened his mouth, but he didn't know how to say it. Could he say that he recognized Su Li before? No. This kind of secret peeping would only be regarded as a provocation, which would annoy Su Jiuzhou. Su Li saw his face turn pale quickly and waved her hand uninterestedly. "Although this matter is related to the negligence of your Chamber of Commerce, it has little to do with you. Elder Een, I want to talk to you about some private things." "Elder thinks." Ju breathed a sigh of relief when he heard the words. He cupped his fists and said, "As long as it doesn't touch the secret, I will definitely satisfy you. In addition, I will prepare the compensation." Su Li nodded. Yuqian's face recovered a trace of blood, and he immediately retreated. Ju glanced at Gue Baiyan, who had a dull expression, strangely. He looked serious and asked, "What do you want to know, fellow practitioner Su?" Su Li picked up the teacup unhurriedly with a strange smile on her face. "How is the attitude of Huangxing Hall towards the descendant of the Ghost Clan?" As soon as these words came out, Ju was shocked, and his body couldn't help trembling. Su Li still smiled, as if she didn't see Ju's panic at all. "The son of First Elder is very good." Her first words made Ju breathe disorderly and suffocate. "You are the host of the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce, but at best, he is just a butler who has been delegated to various places. He has no potential to rise. Do you think that if you and your son die, Huangxing Hall will avenge you?" Ju's old face trembled violently, and his neatly combed hair was a little messy. He clenched his hands and imagined countless times to quickly take out the carrier rune from the universe ring to send a message to the sect. But every time he thought of his son and the sarcastic remarks he had received in Huangxing Hall over the years, the tea was cold. Ju's hands suddenly loosened, and his straight back stooped down. It seemed that something was broken in his heart. He raised his head and said bitterly, "I will tell you everything. Don't kill my son." Su Li held her cheek with one hand and blinked. Her curly eyelashes trembled. "Your child is so sensible. How can I kill innocent people?" Chapter 504. Ju had been in charge of the Chamber of Commerce for many years. Since he had made a decision, he quickly calmed down and asked, "The descendant of the Ghost Clan you mentioned, is it the one who made trouble in the Snow Sect? Besides her, are there other descendants of the Ghost Clan?" Su Li asked rhetorically. Ju was suddenly speechless. He quickly sorted out and explained in detail. "My potential is limited. I usually don't have much contact with the Holy Hall of Huangxing Hall. I'm not as well informed as you think. I can only tell you what I have seen." As Ju said, his voice was slightly lowered, and there was even a trace of doubt. "It seems that the elders of the Holy Hall do not all believe in the Fate Ancestor. I carefully observed and found that the people of the Holy Hall are basically divided into 3 factions. The first one, I call it the Fanatic faction. They almost regard the words of the Fate Ancestor as the golden rule. As long as the Fate Ancestor gives an order, the henchmen will execute it without hesitation." "Are there many such people?" Su Li narrowed her eyes and asked. Ju shook his head. "There are only a few elders who are not in power supporting them. They should be at the bottom of the 3 factions." Su Li nodded slightly. "Yes, if this faction really controlled the Huangxing Hall, it would simply change the name of the force to the Fate Hall. The Lord of the Huangxing Hall was not a fool. How could he let an outsider seize power? Suli guessed that the reason why the Lord of the Huangxing Hall could still tolerate the existence of the radical faction was that he was afraid of the relationship between the Fate ancestor and the natural law. At this time, Ju continued. The second faction is the neutral faction with the largest number of people, including the Lord of the Hall. They turn a blind eye to the Fate ancestor's order. They neither refuse nor execute it, but just perfunctorily. It seems that they don't want to offend the descendant of the Ghost Clan. When Ju said this, he secretly observed Su Li's reaction, but he saw that the latter looked calm and breathed smoothly without the slightest change. Is this woman the descendant of the Ghost Clan herself, or someone around the descendant of the Ghost Clan? He thought secretly, and his guess was more inclined to the latter. At that time, the means of the Ghost Clan's killing in the Ghost region were purely lethal, which was different from the poisonous insect practitioner. However, even with that being the case, I am unable to see through this woman's cultivation base. She is definitely not someone to be trifled with. After making up his mind, Ju's eyes flashed, and he continued. The third faction is the one who resents the Fate Ancestor's edict and has been secretly seeking ways to kill the Fate Ancestor. This faction is mixed in the neutral faction. I don't know how many people there are, but from my daily investigation, its power should be much larger than that of the radical faction. I even found that several of them are inextricably linked to the Leanly building, a force that rose after the bloody accident of Holy Spirit. That's all I know. Tap, tap, tap. Suli tapped the table rhythmically with her knuckles. She smiled and cupped her hands. Thank you for your explanation, Eldarine. I was ordered to do what happened today. You and I each serve different masters, so you should understand the helplessness involved. I've troubled you for a long time. I'll take my leave now. Ju's face was calm, but the details still exposed the fact that he was greatly relieved. He quickly stood up to see Suli off. He took the universe ring prepared by the Chamber of Commerce as an apology and sent Suli to the door. Then he hurriedly returned to the top attic. Bang, bang, bang. With a serious look, he waved his hand to close all the doors of the hall, and the light in the entire hall immediately became dim. After finishing this step, Ju was still worried. After setting a barrier on the isolation tactical matrix, he took out an emergency carrier rune of Huangxing Hall with trembling hands. The traces of the descendants of the Ghost Clan appear in Jiuli region. This must be reported to the Holy Hall. He pinched the golden carrier rune and looked at the round button on it that flickered. His face was uncertain for a moment, but he finally pressed it. After reporting his encounter with Su Jiuzhou to the hall, Ju breathed a sigh of relief, but he found that his back was already wet. He gasped, and the sweat on his body evaporated, and the mist evaporated. Although the descendants of the Ghost Clan are only slightly exposed, it's hard to guarantee that they will be discovered in places that I haven't discovered. If I don't report it, I will definitely be blamed by the Hall. Although those lunatics of the radical faction are the weakest in the Holy Hall, they are still giants for me. I can't afford to provoke them. Ju felt bitter in his heart. It was so difficult for the weak to survive. My potential is exhausted, but Yu Qian still has the possibility to rise. I have opened up half of the way to the Holy Hall to practice. Yu Qian, don't let me down. After Su Li left the Chamber of Commerce, she flew straight to the Jiguang sect. As she flew, she carefully scanned the dark golden universe ring with her divine awareness. After finding that there was no trace, she directly transferred all the compensation into the Black Lotus ring and discarded the universe ring. After doing this, Su Li's eyes flashed. With so many spiritual jades, I don't have to worry about Suiyu tactics before breaking through. This trip has solved the problem of breaking through Suiyu tactics, and I've gained a lot. After a trip to the Jiguang sect, I will go back directly. It has been a long time since I came out. Thinking of this, she sped up. There were 300,000 celestial stones in the stolen universe ring. At her request, the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce changed the compensation to 1. 8 million spiritual jades, 80% of which was a kind of cheap poging jade. Poging jade, a kind of spiritual jade of little value in the cultivation circle, had a slight sharpness effect when it was used to polish magic weapons. However, because the consumption was too high, its price-performance ratio was far lower than other treasures to improve magic weapons. So few people bought it. One celestial stone could be exchanged for 10 pieces of poging jade. Under Su Li's boring attempt, this kind of spiritual jade actually produced an effect that was 10,000 times higher than other spiritual jades. After Su Li sensed her bottleneck, she directly waved her hand and emptied the inventory of the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce. She bought all the inventory of 6 million celestial stones, and the remaining 170,000 celestial stones were used to buy more strange spiritual jades. Those spiritual jades were extremely rare and valuable. Just hundreds of them used up all the remaining compensation amount, and even slightly exceeded. After sorting out her gains with satisfaction, the mountain gate of the Jiguang sect was already in sight. Su Li squinted at Xian and at the foot of the Qingshan mountain. She waved her sleeve and turned into a black rainbow, falling quickly. Xian knew that she was coming and immediately said with joy, "Senior sister apprentice." Su Li glanced at the two elders in black beside him who were sizing her up. They were quite unfamiliar. They should be the elders who stayed in the sect to guard the home. "Senior sister apprentice, my father has been waiting in the hall of the sect for a long time," Xianan said quickly, regardless of how the two elders looked at him. Su Li nodded and looked away from the two elders. "Let's go in." The two elders in black saw that Su Li was so rude and didn't even say hello to them. They were angry in their hearts, but they didn't show any expression on the surface. They led Su Li into the sect stiffly. The mountain gate of the Jiguang sect was a little old. Moss could occasionally be seen on the long stone steps of the mountain gate. The deeper Su Li went, the higher the concentration of nimbus was. She looked through the earth and stones and saw the complex spirit gathering tactical matrix running on its own. The grade of this tactical matrix is at least more than the 12th grade, but it has been in disrepair for a long time. There are many blockages, so the effect of spirit gathering is reduced to the 9th grade. It is even slightly inferior. The past of the Jiguang sect seems to be interesting. Su Li's eyes flashed a hint of light. She didn't see such an old tactical matrix in the Snow sect, and its grade was not as high as this one. Not long after, Su Li arrived at the hall of the sect accompanied by Xian and others. Xian Jingzhou, who had been waiting for a long time, quickly got up and laughed. "Fellow practitioner Su, it's really an honor for us to come to our sect. Come on, serve the best refreshing tea of our Jiguang sect." Before he finished speaking, he saw Su Li reach out to stop him. She said indifferently, "There is no need to drink tea. Why did the Lord invite me here? I'm in a hurry to go back. It's better to come straight to the point." Xian Jingzhou's smile froze. The two elders in black standing not far behind Su Li were even more unkind, and the magic weapons in their hand were ready to take action. "Father, senior sister apprentice, you." Xianan was anxious at once. He really didn't want to see the two people who were close to him have a conflict. Even though Su Li had only been with him for a short time, how could he ignore her sincerity? Xian Jingzhou took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. His eyes softened, and he said to Xianan, "You and the two elders can leave. I'll talk to fellow practitioner Su alone." The two elders in black changed their faces slightly. "Lord." Although the Lord's cultivation was superb, Su Jiuzhou's poisonous insect cultivation methods were mysterious and unpredictable. It was impossible to guard against her. How could they rest assured? "Leave. I think since fellow practitioner Su has a good impression of my son, she won't attack me for no reason, right?" Xian Jingzhou ordered and looked at Su Li. Su Li nodded and said concisely, "Of course." The elders in black hesitated for a moment when they heard the words. Finally, under Xian Jingzhou's gradually gloomy eyes, they retreated with Xianan. At this point, there was no one in the hall. Su Li waved her hand to set a soundproof boundary. She turned her hand and took out the sound acquaintance. She said meaningfully, I think that since the ghouling gambling battle is over, the only reason why Lord Xian can't forget me and warmly invite me is this immortal poisonous insect. Indeed, Xian Jingzhou admitted generously, and he couldn't hide it. He originally wanted to ask this woman for this sound acquaintance. Since you have guessed it, can you give up this poisonous insect? Jiguang's sect is willing to pay the price to trade with you. Su Li smiled and nodded gently. Okay, I promise you. In this life, she had the all-spirits tactics, so this sound acquaintance had become useless. Xian Jingzhou was relieved when he heard the words. He thought that there was no need to take risks, and when Ting Shan could breathe a sigh of relief. Although Su Jiuzhou's means were ruthless, she was a reasonable person. Fellow practitioner Su, what do you want my Jiguang sect to offer in exchange? The smile on Xian Jingzhou's face was more sincere, but it soon disappeared in Su Li's next sentence. I don't lack anything now. Su Li's eyes flickered, and she stared at Xian Jingzhou's face. Tell me, the reason why you want this sound acquaintance, and I will give you the immortal poisonous insect. How about that? Xian Jingzhou's face became gloomy at a speed visible to the naked eye. Fellow practitioner Su, sometimes it's not a good thing to know too much. Su Li raised her eyebrows and looked at Xian Jingzhou, who had inexplicable emotions in her eyes. Her soft voice sounded in the hall. In fact, I can guess it even if you don't say it. It's for the Linli building, right? Chapter 505. Xian Jingzhou's face was completely cold. He stared at Su Li and said gloomily, Fellow practitioner Su, isn't your joke too much? As he said, he put his right hand behind his back without a trace, and a rune appeared in his palm. Our Jiguang sect is a righteous sect. How can we mix with such an evil organization? The black-clothed elders who guarded on both sides of the hall also became cold. They stepped silently and approached Su Li's back. For a time, the atmosphere in the hall was tense to the extreme. Giggle. Suddenly, Su Li covered her mouth and chuckled, breaking the dead silence. She apologized. I'm presumptuous. Xian Jingzhou, please don't blame me. As she said, she retracted her open palm, and sound acquaintance automatically flew to Xian Jingzhou. Since Xian Jingzhou is unwilling to answer my question, I will ask another one. I want to know some secrets of the Tianyin tribe. I wonder if Lord Xian can explain them? Su Li's sudden change made Xian Jingzhou slightly stunned, and then he quickly reacted. He looked at the sound acquaintance close at hand, and finally couldn't help accepting it. He looked up and said to the two people behind Su Li, You leave first. The black-clothed elders were originally Xian Jingzhou's confidants, so they naturally did not resist Xian Jingzhou's order. They looked at each other and then left the hall. In the blink of an eye, only Su Li and Xian Jingzhou were left in the hall, sitting opposite each other. Xian Jingzhou raised the teapot in his hand and personally poured a cup of tea for Su Li. Seeing that the atmosphere eased, he smiled. What do you want to ask? Su Li smiled. As long as Lord Xian knows it, how about telling me all about it? I think an immortal poisonous insect of great significance is enough as a reward, right? Xian Jingzhou frowned slightly. He still couldn't figure out Su Jiuzhou's background. Was this person an enemy or a friend? Was she sent by the holy sects to test him? Or, his eyes flashed, and he asked instead of answering, I haven't asked fellow practitioner Su's teacher. You are so young, but you can defeat a strong practitioner in nature's test. You are really a talent. I think your teacher must be a big shot above Junior Emperor in the cultivation circle, right? Hearing Xian Jingzhou's explicit test, Su Li just smiled and took a sip of tea. She didn't mean to answer at all. Seeing this, Xian Jingzhou felt helpless. This woman was ruthless and had weird means. He really didn't want to offend her. Therefore, even if he had got the immortal goo, he still didn't dare to fool her casually. He immediately recalled all kinds of information about the Tianyin tribe for a moment and said, The Tianyin tribe is the only holy sect in Jili region. I have collected a lot of news in recent years. Although the Tianyin tribe is only a new holy sect with less than 2,000 years, it had a lot of foundation. Ordinary holy sects only have one junior emperor, but the Tianyin tribe has two, and they're both young. Suli listened quietly and did not interrupt. The strength of the Tianyin tribe was clearly described by Xian Jingzhou. Although the information was not necessarily accurate, it was a great supplement for her. The standard to measure the glory sect was a half-emperor, which was a figure in the great vehicle stage. The inheritance of the cultivation circle in Qingshui's circle had withered, and it was difficult to see the grand scene of the ancient times. There were almost no traces of the activities of the great emperors. Suli guessed that only the four top sects might have the old people who were still alive. The system of training the descendants of the Tianyin tribe is slightly different from that of other sects, but it is almost the same. Iwaniying, whom you saw in the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce, is a holy son. He is a genius with small potential, equivalent to the core disciple in the sect. Those tribal disciples whose talents reach the standard of talents are given the title of Holy Son and Goddess, also known as Great Holy Son or Great Holy Girl. Talents have a very high status in the tribe, and the resources in the tribe are also greatly inclined to this small group of people. As long as they don't die prematurely, they will all be in power in the future. Finally, he talked about the Holy Son and Goddess. Su Li's eyes flashed. She was waiting for this moment. She pretended to be confused and said, "I heard Xian Jingzhou mention the Great Holy Son EMO at the venue. What's special about this person among the talents? Why is he specially mentioned by Lord Xian?" EMO, Ling Qinglan. A trace of hatred flashed through Xian Jingzhou's eyes, but he didn't show it on the surface. He only thought that Su Jiuzhou in front of him was really curious, and said, "Speaking of this person, he is also a famous figure in the Tianyin tribe. Together with his sister, the great holy girl Yishui, they are known as the Tianyin tribe's double talents. The two of them became famous 1,000 years ago. After surviving the bloody accident of Holy Spirit, their talents soared. In just a few hundred years, they broke through Yuanying realm and reached Huashan realm. Now more than 500 years have passed. Their cultivation is probably even more unfathomable." The more Su Li listened, the more doubts she had in her heart. According to Xian Jingzhou, Ling Qinglan and Yishui both returned to the tribe and had not left. So, who were the two people staying in Jiuzhou region? She narrowed her eyes slightly, stroked the surface of Black Lotus Ring, and said slowly, "Lord Xian really has a deep study of the Tianyin tribe, which makes me gain a lot. I have one last question. If I want to completely destroy the Tianyin tribe, Lord Xian, what can you do?" Xian Jingzhou was stunned and thought that he had misheard. He said in astonishment, "What did you say?" Su Li smiled and lowered her eyes. She picked up the tea and took a sip, as if she was talking about a trivial matter. "I said that I want to destroy the Tianyin tribe." Lord Xian didn't mishear me. In the hall, there was a dead silence again. Xian Jingzhou stared at the young and delicate face in front of him. The bloody words seemed indescribable incongruity when they came out from the woman's mouth. Was Su Jiuzhou crazy to destroy the holy sect? His eyelids twitched. Thinking of Su Jiuzhou's words and deeds just now, he always felt that he had come into contact with a great trouble. Only the evil practitioners will easily destroy the whole sect. The evil circle. He struggled to maintain calm and whispered, "May I ask why you want to destroy the holy sect of Tianyin tribe?" He deliberately emphasized the word holy sect in order to remind the power of the Tianyin tribe. But the delicate girl in front of him didn't seem to notice it at all. She just smiled and replied with clear and bright eyes, "I just can't stand the arrogant look of the holy sect. Isn't it good to destroy it? As long as it is destroyed, your Jiguang sect will become the first sect in Juli region. What's wrong with that?" Su Li's natural look made Xian Jingzhou's face twitch, and he smiled bitterly. It's not like this. He was more and more sure that he had met a crazy female evil practitioner who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. But this evil practitioner had means that even he was very afraid of, so he couldn't answer casually. "Destroy a holy sect," Xian Jingzhou muttered, and for the first time, he began to seriously think about such an absurd question. After a long time, he raised his head with a bitter face. If you want to destroy the holy sect, you must get rid of the junior emperor. Otherwise, there is no need to talk about it. It doesn't matter. I have enough time. Suli blinked her eyes with a trace of innocence on her face. The junior emperor is not a god. How can two people pay attention to the tribe all the time? Lord Xian, is there any way to make the Tianyin tribe suffer a great loss? Xian Jingzhou was just dealing with it helplessly. When he heard this sentence, an idea suddenly flashed in his mind, and his heart immediately beat wildly, uncontrollably. Maybe I can use this woman to kill the two people. Xian Jingzhou suppressed the excitement in his heart, and thoughts turned quickly in his mind. The evil practitioner deserves to die. If she really has a way to kill the two people and liberate her soul, maybe Qinglan and his sister could be saved. Thinking of this, Xian Jingzhou immediately organized his words and pretended to be surprised. Fellow practitioner Su, there may be an opportunity for you to do it in the Mirage Immortal Festival 5 days later. Half a day later, Suli stayed in the guest room of the Jiguang sect. After waving her hand to dismiss the maid, she closed the door, turned back and sat on the futon, frowning slightly. The Mirage Immortal Festival was the most important traditional festival of the Tianyin tribe, which aimed to worship the ancestor of the Tianyin tribe, the Mirage Immortal. It was said that the Tianyin tribe was also a big tribe in ancient times. There were immortals in the tribe. Among them, the Mirage Immortal went the furthest on the road of cultivation. Later, for some reason, all the immortals in the world disappeared, including the Mirage Immortal. The prestige of the Tianyin tribe declined greatly. However, the clansmen of the Tianyin tribe didn't believe that the most powerful existence in their tribe died like this. Therefore, they held sacrificial activities every year, hoping to get a response. Whether this matter was fabricated by the Tianyin tribe or it was true, it could not be verified. However, it was not important whether it was true or not. What was important was that most of the geniuses and talents of the Tianyin tribe would gather on the square of the Tianyin tribe that day. Xian Jingzhou also specially pointed out that the most talented brother and sister, Emo and Yin Shui, who presided over the sacrificial ceremony of the Mirage Immortal Festival. Xian Jingzhou, you want to use me to kill Ling Qinglan and Yi Shui? Why? Black Lotus, you tell me why? Su Li rubbed the ring, and her eyes flickered. Although Xian Jingzhou concealed it very well today, she still saw through the flaws. Xian Jingzhou must be involved in the Linli building. He is on my side, but he has always wanted to kill Ling Qinglan in the Tianyin tribe. Although I can't feel the familiar soul fluctuation of Ling Qinglan in the Jiuzhou region, his expression and words are all the same. Are there two Ling Qinglan? Su Li closed her eyes, and the conjecture in her mind gradually became clear. The awakened Black Lotus looked at Su Li helplessly and fell into contemplation. He still wanted to contribute some brains, but Su Li's question was not to him, but to herself. There is the skill of dividing souls in ancient times. Since the Tianyin tribe has been inherited for a long time, it is normal for them to master some tricks. Ling Qinglan and Yin Shui are incomplete. Maybe there is more than one divided soul. Black Lotus said his own conjecture. Then if this is the case, the divided souls of the Tianyin tribe must be killed. Su Li suddenly opened her eyes. Her eyes were calm, and there was a trace of pity in her tone. I just wanted to test Xian Jingzhou, and I didn't want to do it. Black Lotus was stunned for a moment, and then sighed. The skill of dividing souls is a trick. How can you tell which is Ling Qinglan and which is not? This is simple. Su Li narrowed her eyes and smiled brightly. The shadow behind her loomed. Just kill all the young generation. Chapter 506. At night, the Tianyi River passing through the center of the city was calm. Pleasure boats with red houses with red lanterns were floating on the river. Iwaning, with his hands behind his back and two attendants behind him, boarded the largest pleasure boat with ease. The beautiful boat lady immediately greeted him with a charming voice. Holy boy Waning, I haven't seen you for a long time. One often talks about you. I've been busy with the affairs of the sect recently, so I seldom come here. Ewaning's eyes drifted over the boat lady's chest and asked with a smile, "Where is Juan?" "She's dressing up." The boat lady threw a coquettish look. Since the holy boy was selected, Juan has never contacted other guests. She misses you every day and waits for you to come and pamper her. Haha, well done. Ewaning laughed out loud and casually sent 2 attendants to follow the boat lady down. Then he hurried to Juan's room. "Squeak, child, I miss you so much." He waved his hand to open the door, and a pair of soft and boneless arms wrapped around his neck. Words with the fragrance of orchids blew on his face. "Child, you must be tired. Come in and have a rest." Ewaning's eyes flashed with intoxication, and he immediately grabbed the person in front of him with both hands and closed the door in Juan's shameful scream. Soon, there was a suppressed gasp in the room. Gue Bayan stood in front of the door. There were a lot of boat ladies around, but none of them noticed his existence. The white ball of light in his hand gradually turned black and finally became transparent. When Ewaning's face appeared on it, he immediately turned around, bowed, and said in a low voice, "Master, it's done." Suli nodded gently and took the light in her palm. At this moment, there was a sound of footsteps outside the pleasure boat, mixed with a faint, angry conversation. Lanting Pleasure Boat is junior brother Waning's favorite place. I heard that he also hired a prostitute. Although she was a virgin, bastard, how can a holy boy linger in a red house? It's a disgrace to our tribe. Senior brother, the prostitutes in Lanting Pleasure Boat are carefully prepared for practitioners. It's not, what did you say? The tribe's sacrificial ceremony is just around the corner, and we're so busy that we can't spare any attention. But he's actually spending his time here. At this point, Suli finally saw several men wearing the costumes of the disciples of the Tianyin tribe step on the gaily painted boat. One of them pushed away the boatwoman who greeted them coldly, walked straight in, and kicked the door of Ewaning. Boom! A loud noise scared Ewaning, who was working hard on his plowing, and he almost died. He turned his head abruptly, and the anger in his heart was immediately extinguished by a bucket of cold water. He said in a panic, "Senior brother, why are you here?" The long-faced young man's eyes widened. He couldn't help but stare at such an erotic scene. Then, he directly grabbed Ewaning and dragged her out. "Little junior brother, do you want to anger master to death? The sacrificial ceremony is with you, but you didn't keep your body clean and came to such a dirty place. If the elders of the tribe find out," Ewaning naturally knew the consequences, but he couldn't control his lower body. Now that he was discovered by his senior brother, he heaved a sigh of relief and quickly begged for mercy. "Eldest senior brother, please don't be angry. It's my fault. You must help me hide this. I will show filial piety to you senior brothers later." The long-faced young man coughed when he heard the words, and his expression eased slightly. He put down Ewaning and said with a straight face, "Put on your clothes quickly." He didn't really want to get involved in this matter, but just wanted to extort some practice resources from Ewaning. Since the effect was achieved, of course, he wouldn't be so persistent. A moment later, Ewaning dealt with the inexplicable smell on his body and left quickly with the long-faced young man and others. But he had a lot of doubts in his heart. He came to the gaily painted pleasure boat on a whim. Who told him the secret? In doubt, he didn't notice that the shadow behind him fluctuated for a moment, and then returned to calm. Gue Bayan stood in the same place and watched everyone go away. Then he immediately changed his appearance and quickly came to the teleportation matrix of Tiani City. After handing a large amount of spiritual stones to the manservant, he said in a deep voice, "The fastest teleportation matrix. Send me to Juzhou region." The manservant took the spiritual stones and was overjoyed. He quickly opened all the complicated matrix patterns. Boom! The teleportation matrix suddenly ran, and Gue Bayan's figure disappeared instantly. At the same time, Ewaning followed his senior fellow apprentice and others through the tribal big matrix. The fluctuation of the tribal big matrix spread out and soon returned to calm. "Junior fellow apprentice, why are you always in a daze?" The long-faced young man suddenly appeared, and Iwaniing, who was absent-minded, was startled. He forced a smile and said, "Senior fellow apprentice, I'm fine. I just feel strange somewhere, as if something horrible is staring at me in the dark." "What?" The long-faced young man looked strange. "Little junior fellow apprentice, some things can't be said casually. No one has successfully invaded the tribal big matrix for thousands of years. Even the strong of Junior Emperor was blocked outside. You said that you sensed the intention of peeping. Do you want to repudiate your promise?" Iwaniing hurriedly waved his hand when he heard the words, No, I dare not. I'll send someone to send the gift to you later." He smiled apologetically, but he was very aggrieved in his heart. He also left the uncomfortable feeling behind. "You just practiced for 200 years more than me, but you dare to bully me like this. When my cultivation surpasses you, I will teach you a lesson." He was full of indignation in his heart, but he put away all his emotions on the surface. He followed the long-faced young man step by step, and soon arrived at an extremely spacious square on the top of the mountain. Looking at the sparse disciples of the Tiani tribe in the square, another person behind the long-faced young man said, "The sacrificial ceremony of the Mirage Immortal will begin in a few hours. Senior fellow apprentice, let's find a place to wait." The long-faced young man nodded and found a futon to sit down. Iwaniing and others sat behind him. They were quiet and waited silently. Just at the moment when Iwaniing sat down, the shadow behind him twisted for a moment, and then Su Li, who was wearing the ordinary costume of the Tiani tribe, slowly appeared behind Iwaniing. Iwaniing and others didn't notice it. Su Li glanced at the unlit spiritual wood piled up in the center of the square, turned around, and sat down in a corner. The Tiani tribe had a history of thousands of years, and there were many branches. The disciples of different branches were strange to each other, and some of them had never met each other. The disciples of the surrounding tribes turned their heads and glanced at her, and then no longer paid attention to her. They didn't doubt Su Li's identity at all. As time went by, more and more people came to the square and occupied the futons. Stewards, immortal sons and goddesses, and the elders in charge of the sacrificial ceremony also came to the Taoist, right one after another. The atmosphere became more and more lively. Boom! The last ray of light in the sky fell, and a line of fire ejected from the elders and fell into the spiritual wood. In an instant, it burst into the sky and illuminated everyone's face. Su Li looked up at the fire, and suddenly a pale young man sat down beside her. The clothes he wore were far less bright than those of other disciples. They were wrinkled and even faded. Alas, with a sigh, he turned his head and saw Su Li's childish face. He said bitterly, "Sister, have you offended the elders of the tribe and been forced to be a sacrifice?" Sacrifice? Su Li's eyes flickered, and she was confused after thinking for a moment. "What is the sacrifice? My sister only asked me to join in the fun. She said that there are benefits, isn't it?" When the pale young man heard the words, his eyes widened slightly, and he blurted out, "What? You don't know?" "Know what?" Su Li seemed to be flustered because of his words. "Brother, I cheated." Silence. Suddenly, a solemn voice came from the nothingness, and the noisy square instantly became silent. The young man opened his mouth, but he didn't dare to make sound. He could only swallow the words in his mouth. With his low cultivation, he couldn't even transmit the sound secretly. A black light flashed in Su Li's eyes, and the last trace of hesitation disappeared. With her experience, even if this person didn't say it, she could guess a thing or two. In this life, I haven't killed too many people. I even don't want to kill innocent people because I have been comfortable for a long time. But Su Li narrowed her eyes and looked at the great holy son, Emo, who walked slowly to the high platform with a completely strange face. There are no innocent people in the cultivation circle. To worship the ancestors and summon the Mirage Immortal, the Tianyin tribe. At the same time, a group of elders in the Lord's Hall far away were watching everything in the square through the water mirror. Seeing great holy son Emo, wearing a purple and gold priest robe and reading the elegy calmly. The elders all praised him with a smile. The great holy son is a talented man, and he will be a pillar of our Tianyin tribe in the future. Yes, since absorbing the soul of that evil creature, the great holy son's cultivation has advanced rapidly, and his state of mind has also grown rapidly. I think it won't take long for him to be able to take charge. It won't take long? I think it can be done now. The patriarch of the Tianyin tribe, sitting in the center of the throne, to worship the ancestors and summoned the mirage immortal, the Tianyin tribe. At the same time, a group of elders in the Lord's hall far away were watching everything in the square through the water mirror. Seeing great holy son Emo, wearing a purple and gold priest robe and reading the elegy calmly. The elders all praised him with a smile. The great holy son is a talented man, and he will be a pillar of our Tianyin tribe in the future. Yes, since absorbing the soul of that evil creature, the great holy son's cultivation has advanced rapidly, and his state of mind has also grown rapidly. It won't take long for him to be able to take charge. It won't take long? I think it can be done now. The patriarch of the Tianyin tribe, sitting in the center of the throne, to worship the ancestors and summon the mirage immortal, the Tianyin tribe. At the same time, a group of elders in the Lord hall far away were watching everything in the square through the water mirror. Seeing great holy son Emo, wearing a purple and gold priest robe and reading the elegy calmly. The elders all praised him with a smile. The great holy son is a talented man, and he will be a pillar of our Tianyin tribe in the future. Yes, since absorbing the soul of that evil creature, the great holy son's cultivation has advanced rapidly, and his state of mind has also grown rapidly. It won't take long for him to be able to take charge. It won't take long? I think it can be done now. The patriarch of the Tianyin tribe, sitting in the center of the throne, that you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.